We have talked a lot on this channel lately about the industry. We've talked a lot about the successes and failures of Marvel, DC, Image, and others. And we've talked a lot about what those companies need to do to right the ship if there are troubles, but also to keep momentum. And it does feel like each of them has momentum to varying degrees based largely around their micro lines, which we talked about extensively last week on the show. But today, we are turning things around. We are turning them around, and we are going to put the focus, the spotlight on ourselves.
What?
And by that, I don't just mean the four of us,
Oh,
I
thank
mean
God.
you. I mean everybody. Because the topic today, the big question on my mind is everyone talks about the lack of change in comics, but are we the reason? Are comic book fans, particularly Big Two fans, the problem when it comes to the lack of change in comics? Can we accept it when these companies try to change? I'm not so sure.
Sean said, "You're gonna sit there and think about what you've done, or we're turning the ship around."
No, 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 no. You're gonna sit there and think about what you've done, and the ship is gonna go in the same direction.
Yeah, it ain't no turnaround. This is what it is. Forward momentum, always. Advance forward. The Comics
Or not.
Pals AF. All right. Nobody read Absolute Batman. Thanks for playing. We've got Kale.
What's up, bad joke dogs?
We've got Marco.
The One Piece is real.
Tyler.
I got the joke, Sean. I'm just still warming up.
It's great. And I'm Sean. Thank you guys for being here, whether you were live with us or in the future. We've got a lot to talk about today. Again, this is going to require some introspection, which is hard for some people to do. But we're going to have to do it today because if we want comics to succeed, a big part of that is our willingness and our ability to allow the companies to move things forward. And I was thinking about my history with change in comics because, we all got into comics around a similar time, those mid 2000s years. And for me, everything was amazing. I loved it. I was super excited. And I think I immediately started to become crystallized. I immediately started to, oh, wow, hey, this is how it is. It'll always be this way. And I don't know, within a few years, I was one of those people saying, wait a second, it can't change that. It can't do that. And I was trying to think, like, what was the first thing that they did that really bothered me? And I think my answer is probably going to be the same for a lot of people, especially on the Marvel side of things, because One More Day was that moment for me. At the time, I don't care anymore. But at the time, that was the moment where I was like, you can't break up Spider-Man and Mary Jane. Not only can you not do that, that is not going to be the outcome of this storyline. That's not what's going to happen.
So you crystallized very quickly.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Yeah. Well, you said early on. I didn't expect to think your first run in Spider-Man.
Yeah. Do you mean instantly?
4 years. I was
Yeah.
done.
It's funny because I think I jumped on at a period where I realized things could be different. So some of my first comics were Jeff Johns' Teen Titans, like, really jumping in continuity, and that was really where I dove head first. And I remember looking at the cover for the first trade, which is that Michael Turner, uh Sears background, where they're all posing or whatever. And I looked at it. I remember going, but this isn't the Teen Titans. Who are these people? Thinking of the cartoon. And then I went, and reading it, I realized, oh, there's so much here. Things have changed. They've shifted. There's generations. And then, I got into Batman Hush, and I, saw all the truncated history that Jeff Loeb packed into that as like the Batman 101 class. And then I went from that to Amazing Spider-Man, which went from, went through JMS into Civil War. And my big fuck this moment was Peter revealing his identity. And then that was almost immediately retconned. And I went, okay, cool. Not retconned, I guess, but it was
Fixed, resolved, or whatever.
Resolved. Yeah, that's a better word for it. And that didn't that didn't bother me so much that I didn't even blink at one more day.
I've been sitting here racking my brain trying to think of when that first moment was for me, and I'm struggling just because I feel like of the characters that I'll read, a Batman, an Aquaman, not a lot of series to go. Maybe Aquaman probably like the first series because I was following it in long form, and even then it was, oh, I don't like this writer, not necessarily the direction of the character. Um, Maybe the Cullen Bunn stuff where it's like, oh, this is leaning into a tinge of horror or something like that. So I think it's interesting to think about like a crystallization when so much of the media that we have as well around some of these characters are so different, and we're reading about them uh, looking backwards. We're reading, year one, Frank Miller. We're reading The Dark Knight Returns. We're reading the uh, all of those things that signify major change, but we accept those pieces because they've happened and are now part of the history of the character. Um, I'm trying to decide if that's for all readers that applies, or if you can go back and find actually this is the epitome of what I think the character is or should be, regardless of what came before or will come after, as opposed to the stuff that I'm reading is the thing that is my X character.
It's funny. I'm trying to think about something that I don't know if I've had that moment. When I came into comics, I came in during kind of a brand new day, Spider-Man, Bendis on Avengers. But my bread and butter, what I was really enjoying when I first started comics was Initiative, Avengers: The Initiative. And reading that and then it kind of going nowhere, kind of set a a baseline for my expectations for comics. In that things will rubber band back to just the core characters every so often. And I think having read during the Bendis era too, like with so many arcs of Bendis's run that always kind of go back to the Avengers, Heroic Rage went back to the Avengers. I just assume like, hey, this run maybe isn't for me, but it'll get back to a square one eventually, and I can try that. So I don't. Maybe I was born into the change, and I was also during the time Dick Grayson became Batman. You know,
Mm.
so I think I was just. I'm like, I guess, the bane of comic book change because I was kind of born in a big part of it. So it's never really bothered me. It's more like, all right, well, I have a jumping off point now. I'll have a jumping on point later.
Is- to that, I feel like since I started weekly superhero comics during New 52, for me it was like, oh, the this change is good because I was enjoying the things that were happening. The things that the ways that publishers think about new initiatives must be good. That was the initial thought, and then from there, as you continue to read, you come across different initiatives. The DCU stuff, which came into Rebirth, where like certain books dip in quality, but I think to that point, still retained a level of, well, this is the writer, this is the artist, this is the creative team, this is the story, as opposed to like this is my character.
Man, maybe
I want to
maybe we're
say
actually
I want to say thank you to Jedi Ty for becoming a Comics Pals VI pal And I want to use this opportunity to let you guys know that we are debuting a brand new show this Monday. This Monday, a brand new show from the Comics Pals. We have heard you guys. You want to hear us talking more about comics, more about the things that we are excited about week to week, more about the things that we are reading off the show. And this is the way that you will be able to do that. That will be available to everyone on Monday. But right now, our channel members can check it out. We want your feedback. So make sure that if you watch it, you let us know what you think. Leave us a comment with your thoughts. That's going to help us iterate in the future. And we thought we'd give you a taste of what's to come. But yeah, just wanted to put that out there for the channel members. And for everybody else, make you aware that Monday we are starting a new show. Thank you to Shadow Walker, who joined the channel membership at the sidekick tier. Really appreciate you both for doing that. Super chats are open as well. Make sure you like the video. Everything that you guys do to support us really, really helps a lot. Go ahead, Kale.
I was just going to say, maybe the three of us are actually awful test cases for this conversation.
I want. I just think that you can see it, like when I've read comics, and ever since I've read comics, I can always see how the sausage is made in a way. You know, like all new, all different Marvel comes out, and there's a lot of change there. But also, I knew at the time, it's like, all right, well, they still have Tony in that suit. It's all like the amount of times Steve has gotten old and lost the shield alone in my time of reading comics. I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 times at this point. So it's just like maybe I'm just a little more okay with the constant reshuffling of the board and then putting the pieces back together.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I didn't like the MJ Peter split and I was really frustrated by it. But then Brand New Day came out, or and they did Big Time and they did all those things, and it was okay. It was like, all right, this is the new path. And I was cool with that until Superior Spider-Man. Then I was off again. And I feel like I've had this experience multiple times. And I mean, I'm speaking to people, if you're out there and you can hear us, I'm pretty sure you've had this experience too, where it's like, yeah, change is great until you come across that thing you don't like. And that was one of those things for me too. Superior was like, no, this is not okay for me. I don't want to read a Dr. Octopus story. I spend my money to read stories about Peter Parker. And that was around a similar time. I don't know the exact amount of years that were in between, but that was a similar amount of time as one of the most significant bouts of change that I think Marvel in particular has experienced. And that was around the Sam Cap, Mighty Thor, Wolverine X-23 era, where they swapped all those characters out and really, really alienated and upset a lot of people. And all this thinking has made me realize, like, at all these points, the only real problem people ever had was with characters changing. Prices we've rode with. Marvel being purchased by Disney, we rode with that. All these things we go with, but you better not make Sam Wilson be Captain America. Like, what caused Marvel to lose more readership? Going from $2 to $3.99, or Wolverine dying, Steve becoming old, and Thor becoming unworthy.
Wolverine dying back then, but they also bringing Old Man Logan into the main universe.
Yeah, but I think to even what you said there with the Superior Spider-Man stuff, right? Like, I feel like it becomes outs for people, but I don't know to what degree they become in for people. Because KO, you like that Superior Spider-Man run.
I initially I thought I had a big reaction to it a little bit later, but initially I thought the premise was outstanding, and I maintain it's one of the most dangerous things they've done with Spider-Man in a long time.
Mm.
That was a jumping on point for some of my friends who were a little too. Slots Run had been going on for a while at that point, but then the buzz around Superior Spider-Man, mostly negative from people, but at least there was buzz. There was like major news outlets reporting it. Was enough to get some people I know to pick it up. I don't know if anyone of them stuck with it, but there's that same number one kind of pop with it. I maintain that it's my favorite part of Slots Run. But I have a Superior Spider-Man action figure right in front of me, so I'm just a fan.
Let's say hello to Get Shitty, Izzy's Issues. What's up, Izzy? Tevya Smoker, good to see you. Gore Vidal hanging out with us. Nosfer Onder 87. What's up to you? Steve Matthews, how you doing, Steve? Spiral Storm, always a pleasure. Matt McDonald, how you doing, Matt? I wanted to pluck this comment from Nas, who said, if Ironheart was called Mecha Maiden, Chase Fox Batman called Night Watcher, do you think people would have bought their comics? I like that comment because I think you could apply that same question to the three characters we just talked about. And I think what it gets into is like, why do you have to take the character that I love and make someone else play that role, play that position? Like if I really, really love Steve Rogers, I don't want to see him taken off the board. So you're taking the character off the board and then you're giving someone else their name, their secret identity. It can rub people the wrong way. But on the other hand, if it to Nas's point, if those characters were introduced with those names and had nothing to do with Batman or nothing to do with Iron Man, no one would care. We already know people don't care about new characters. No one cared about those new characters.
From a publishing standpoint, there is a need to tie characters to other ones that sell money. I mean, look at how many Batman books that we have. Doesn't necessarily mean everyone needs to become Batman, but having that anchor to something that sells is helpful. So I understand that from a publishing standpoint, for sure.
It's helpful to help launch the character, but then I think to that point, right? They have to stand on their own 2 feet, and if they're too attached, if there's too much synergy there, I feel like it can then falter because it's just like, oh, are you replacing this character? I don't want that. It is the change that Sean there is talking about versus separating them into their own character, which isn't as impactful a change. But then you really have to make sure that the character that you're pushing there can sell enough to maintain on the stands.
It's weird though because I do have the Entertainment Weekly image of all new, all different, which is the era Sean was talking about. Ironheart, Wolverine, all that stuff. And I remember seeing this when it came out, and I was excited. Sometimes I'm a fan of big change like this, sweeping change, because it's like, all right, well, I wasn't going to be able to read that before now. Like an Inhumans book, yes, X-Men was kind of off the table at the point, and I was upset about that. But Inhumans book that actually turned out to be pretty damn freaking good, excited me. So like when I see big sweeping change like this, I can see the negatives from a bigger perspective. But personally, I get excited for big stuff like this.
Risk. I think it's the risk
Yeah.
of
I'll read an Iron Man story maybe 1 or 2 years from now. Like it'll be fine, and I have plenty that I haven't read. So like I don't know, I'm okay with this usually.
But you have to play it. You have to play into it, and I think take the risk because then you run into an issue where you potentially get stagnant with the pool of people. I mean, and I feel like recently we've talked about how the Marvel as a publisher has felt compared to DC not as ambitious. The all in stuff has been, I think, book for book more enjoyable. Seems like they're leading with creatives and story as opposed to Marvel, which we have the Ultimate line, but mainline can feel, especially stuff like X-Men, The Avengers, even though some of us don't like it, can feel flat, and that's again from that story and the creator perspective. Um, so I think it's an ebb and a flow, but the risk is necessary to decide whether or not it becomes an ebb or it becomes a flow. It becomes an increase or it becomes a decrease.
Wolverine, right before All New, All Different, was stagnant as fuck. He was everywhere. People complained about him. He had go away heat for some people at that time. Um, and the X-23 as Wolverine by Tom Taylor is probably one of my favorite Wolverine runs ever. It's phenomenal. Did everything need to change at once? I think that freaked a lot of people out. I think that was like jumping into a pool, but that pool is full of ice. So they got a little shocked there, but I do think that like some amazing stuff came out of that.
And I want to see from chat, like, let's get real honest. Let's get really, really transparent. Because I think the point of this conversation is like, well, what is our contribution to the problems? Um, I can definitely say, like, looking at this all new, all different, I remember not being particularly happy at this time with Marvel. I just, it started to get to a point where I couldn't recognize it as much. And I wasn't too happy as a reader. There were certainly things that I read that I enjoyed. Like looking at this list, I think I agree with Tyler wholeheartedly. The Wolverine run was fantastic. This would have been the Jason Aaron, I think, Doctor Strange, which was
Yeah.
quite good. I remember enjoying that. But looking at this, even now today, I'm like, dude, I don't think I liked any of this stuff.
The Fraction Karnak book. Remember when Karnak had a book? Wait,
Yeah, I
do
remember
you remember
that.
Karnak?
I think I liked it.
Yeah, yeah, it
I
was
think I liked
the
it.
Immortal Iron Fist team, I believe. Um, yeah, I look back
I,
at this and I'm like, oh, geez, this is a Hyperion. There's a bit of Doctor Spectrum there for the Squadron Supreme. I don't know where Citizen V ever came into play. I don't even think there was a Thunderbolts book at that point. So strange, but Soul's Daredevil started then too. That was with Ron Garney. That's with 10 Fingers. Really gross character. But there's some gems then.
I'm thinking to um, the to me, we'll bring it to Swamp Thing. But Rom B coming out with Levi, changing the main character there for what has historically been, Alec Holland, and um, it's it's built into the character now because of more that anybody moving forward can kind of become the new elemental. You have a parliament of trees. It's meant to be distributed amongst individual characters. Um, I don't want to see anybody else sometimes. I'm locked into my boy Alec, but when it comes to, I think you have to provide a bit of trust to creators. But in that moment, if I'm being honest, I was a little worried. I was excited because it was Rom B, but had it been another creator, something I didn't trust as much, if it wasn't Perkins, Spiced, if it wasn't the mics, right? If the creative team wasn't there, if the story wasn't there, then I think me as a longtime fan for that character um, would have been disappointed by the direction because the change there was again built into the story, built into who this character is, but different because I wasn't getting the character I'd been reading up until that point that has been in that role for the past 30, 40 years.
Yeah, and I think with characters like Swamp Thing, it's interesting because Swamp Thing, there's an agenda that comes with being the Swamp Thing. It's like a charge.
Yeah.
Um and anyone can fulfill that purpose if they are chosen to fulfill it. So I do see that as a bit different. But also it helps that the run was great. If it wasn't, then you would say, "Oh, I don't like Levi, and I hate that they changed away from Alec, and it was unnecessary." And maybe you wouldn't, but a person could. And it's funny how so much of whether the change is good or not depends on the result. of the quality of the story to you rather than, like change for the sake of change. Like the change is judged by the result.
Yeah, yeah, and I think to that you can learn two lessons from that, right? You can say, oh, if they change this character, because even though it is built into the role of Elemental and the character Swamp Thing versus the individual, the lesson you can learn is, oh, when it's somebody who isn't Alec Holland, it's bad, right? No, the other lesson, the one that I would think of, the one that I would go to is uh simply this wasn't the story or the character therein to be able to tell an effective and engaging story with this character. And I see Get Shitty's comment here. Disagree with Marco. The point of Swamp Thing is change. It's the one big true character where change is the draw, in my opinion, for sure. I think it's, like I said, built into the character, but you have to then reconcile with the fact that the character hasn't been different for 40 years, right? There's a choice there because there's a familiarity there with the character Holland, and even the original off the that one page, the what is it, the that short story from Lin Wein and Bernie Wrightson in the beginning, pulling it out, boy. Ah, oh, god damn it,
Marco,
pulling it
your
out.
hat's not even working for you right now,
I
right?
know,
This is not.
but but that was a different character originally, Alex Olson, and then it became once the actual run started, got Alec Holland, right? So it is built into that character, but you have to figure out why nobody else wants to touch a character that isn't Alec, and why Levi was such a divergence from that.
I really like this comment from Revolutionary Dragon because this is what I was hoping to see. I was in the anti-woke mindset back then, but I appreciate the all new, all different era. Um, First of all, I want to thank you for becoming a VI pal, joining the channel membership. That means you're going to have early access to videos, just like the brand new show that we have out through there right now, which will be available for everybody on Monday. But Revolutionary Dragon saying, I was in the anti-woke mindset back then, but I appreciate the nod era. I love that you're willing to address that a part of why you rejected it at the time is your own baggage. And I would love to hear from you, like, what changed to allow you to appreciate that era now in hindsight? Because you were a different person, but like, what changed for you?
And get shitty, which is a fun username to say. Also said, fundamentally, I think things are rejected more because the change is more about an examination of a fundamental of the character that people aren't comfortable having questioned. And to tie into that, I think that's because some readers see themselves in fundamental parts of characters.
Hmm.
And when that's changed, that might either cause them to look into change for themselves, or like the what if of themselves, or now they don't have that mirror in the book that they're reading. And now they might not be able to see that representation that drew them into the character in the first place. And I think that's fair. I don't think people are the best at expressing that when the reactionary feeling of how do I react to this change initially happens. But I think that's a fair thing, and I think it is healthy for people to think about it and to think about, all right, what about Peter Parker not being Spider-Man, or Spider-Man not being Peter Parker rather, bothers me. What about Peter Parker do I love that is now taken away from me?
Atomic Hound with the 20 spot. Thank you so much, Hound, for breaking the super chats wide open this morning. He says, here's the cycle. Publisher finds what sells, milk to death, fans leave due to fatigue, change content, fans sample, don't like it, change back to old status quo, and repeat the cycle. Relax and enjoy. It will change soon enough. Yeah, I mean, that is definitely the like rational, logical point of view. But I think that it's worth acknowledging the fact that despite what Atomic Hound said being absolutely true, we don't react like that a lot of the time. And obviously, there are some reactions that are way over the top that don't really have a place in this discourse. It's not what I'm talking about. I'm not interested in the death threat people. I'm interested in the moderate people, you know, who say, I don't want to deal with that change. And for me, uh, in the case of Steve Rogers, Captain America, one of my all-time favorite characters, I love him for very specific things that Sam, a character who I also love, doesn't necessarily represent. Why? Because they're not the same character. So I don't think you can just take, Steve off the board and say, all right, Sam's Cap now, live with it, because they're not the same person. It's Captain America, but it's not Steve Rogers. It's different than Swamp Thing, for example, because Swamp Thing is an elemental concept that must exist. Steve Rogers is a singular person, with singular ideals that are what Captain America stands for.
So when Marvel tries to have its cake and eat it too, where both Caps coexist and are Captain America at the same time, how do you feel about that, John?
I would rather live in a world where there was only one Captain America. But I accept that that's not how it is, and they've definitely told meaningful stories with this status quo that I have enjoyed very much.
Doesn't mean you're out on comics or Captain America comics either. Like that could very well be the thing where, oh, I can't believe it. I'm not reading one of these ever again.
Wait, I do have a moment where I stopped reading a book because of a change.
There we go.
Captain America becoming a landlord. I was out. Bridge too far for me.
Room too far.
Hey, what's going on, Dion? Dion Z says, caught the boys live again finally. Haven't caught up to the videos, but keen to get through the backlog soon. Well, the beautiful thing about YouTube is that it is all there for you. You catch us live now today, and then down the road, you catch up with everything that you're lacking. Thank you, Dion. Appreciate you being here with us. Pete Collins says, change is best accepted gradually. Build up to it in story. Change for change's sake is what makes things divisive.
And I think the industry of comics is hard to do slow change. The way things are marketed, the way books sell, it's very
The way
few and
books
far.
are the way books are created.
Yeah, yeah, it's few and far between where we get that slow change. So it's weird because on its face that statement rings true. I think that just for storytelling that rings true. Just to be able to like build up to something and have a payoff. But I can also see it's like, well, sometimes you just gotta pull the Band-Aid off in terms of publishing, and that sucks. And I wish it wasn't like that, because I think some of these stories where sweeping changes have happened to either mantles or identities and stuff like that are good. They could be even better if you can build up to it. Like imagine we knew about Nick Fury's son way back when, instead of him just being switched randomly, and then a guy named Cheese actually being Coulson the whole time. Like having like Nick Fury Jr. and Coulson in the Marvel comics and building up to that would have been nice. But why did I go to Coulson out of all the options? I don't know, but that's the one that jumped out to me.
Yeah, I think the change that's like heaped on us can often feel really overwhelming, and it's too much. And granted, we're not all reading the same comics, but I know that when Marvel or DC say they've got a new initiative coming, I want to check out as much of it as I can. And when I look at it and it's replacing a bunch of characters who I genuinely love with characters who I might not care about as much, it can be frustrating. And I'll say it again. That same era we're talking about, most of those stories were really great.
I have a question for the panel here. What is more likely to elicit you to have a more visceral response? A storyline change, like Peter Parker being mind wiped and replaced with Doc Ock for Superior Spider-Man, or a creative team sweeping change?
If it's mid arc creative change, like I feel like it. If we're talking about blank slate in either direction,
Just blank slate. That mid arc, everyone can agree. Mid arc, just not having the creator,
yeah,
finish their story. That's a problem.
I mean, in that case, like the story, because it could have been the situation that you're leading into this larger narrative, into this, thing that pays off, arc to arc to equal saga or something, right? And that doesn't pay off. That I think becomes frustrating. I'm willing to try out a new creative team. Hold on. Hold on.
You were chewing on that one
Reboot.
for a bit, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah. I was so confident, and then I thought of like, oh, but what happened when this time happened? And I was like, damn, I did not like that. No, mm, I think actually, I think it is the creative team because they could decide to tell stories so differently. They can communicate those things so differently, and I think that that's ultimately what comics are: is the communication of a thing, and that thing is the story. The story, the narrative can change in either direction, harshly, slowly, um, but if it's not communicated well in a way that is cohesive and makes sense, then I will be off.
I think for me, I jump off most of the time when like in this example, I'm more likely to jump off if a creative team changes. Just because I find in my experience that a lot of the time the impending creative team is not as good as the one we were just reading. Like I feel like they often go down in quality rather than up in quality. Unless you're in a transitional period like Amazing Spider-Man is right now. Um, Largely, you know, Hickman's being replaced by X writer who's not Hickman. And I lose interest.
I think storyline wise too, like even if something you don't like happens, there's a chance for that to recover and there's a chance for that to, be used for a purpose. I didn't like it when Spider-Man I revealed his identity to the world and I swore I'd never read another Spider-Man again. But a couple issues later when he was fighting Iron Man on the cover of Civil War whatever, listen, I was back in.
Oh, the cover. Damn, that looks cool.
Too bad I swore I'd never read it again.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
I don't know. I hope you didn't swear on anything in particular, because
Maybe just this time.
If I can, because Revolutionary Dragon was good enough to answer the question. I would love to read his answer, even though it is a bit personal. For
Please.
me, I just had a lot of self-hate for myself, which I grew to love myself. As far as the characters, having different characters take on the role gives potential new ideas and stories. Well, you know what? First of all, if I had a hat on right now, I would take it off for you. What I will do instead is I will wave this green flag for you because finding self-love is a beautiful thing. And I think that that is beyond comics what we should all be on the journey of. And look at how Revolutionary Dragon was able to look at comics differently based on how he felt about himself. That's tremendous. That is the apex of growth. And I really, really commend you for that. That's a beautiful thing. And I think we could all learn a lesson from that. But I will also say, I don't think that all resistance to change in any form comes from a place of self-hate. I think Revolutionary Dragon was dealing with, like he said, the anti-woke stuff. And that's a little bit unique. But we can all learn a lesson about, hey, how much of myself is tied into my feelings about this?
there's a little introspection that can be had. And it's funny because I think we're talking a lot about the Marvel side of things, and maybe that's because we're Marvel fans. But I wonder if because that is supposed to be the world outside your window, and the characters are in a way more relatable, that visceral response happens more often. I think with a character like Peter Parker, I think that it's so ingrained in the character that there are bits and pieces of Peter Parker's personality and character that are so relatable that it just, you don't even think about it when you're reading the character. And so when change happens, you're not even really doing the introspection to see why that would bother you so much, because it's just built into the character. It's by design.
Well, I mean, if we could easily talk about this in the case of DC, and I mean, DC fans are insane. Um,
You saying
my
that
God,
you're just proving the Marvel podcast theory is true, Sean.
I've always felt like this. Barbara Gordon fans are nuts.
Yeah.
They're nuts.
Yeah.
That is an opinion of Sean. That is not a Comics Pal's opinion for all you Babs heads out there.
I think that's a pretty. I
I'm
mean,
trying
look,
to help.
like,
I'm trying to help our social media account. Jeez.
The social media account that we hardly use.
yeah, come on.
It,
we're not Tom Taylor. We don't have to worry about it.
yeah, DC. I think DC has just as big a problem. Look at the reaction to John Kent. I don't know if anybody is happy. And to be fair, though, DC did this to themselves. I genuinely think they made a mistake that they can't walk back with John Kent. But that character is like a lightning rod for everything that people do not like about comics. Everything. He magically aged, which is like, what the fuck? How did that happen? You can't even explain that. He is uh gender he's a bisexual character, which is absolutely not a problem, but a lot of people who have problems with that are directing it towards that character, so it compounds. And then on top of that, DC hasn't really tried to do anything meaningful with him since they announced his sexuality. So to a lot of people, it feels like, oh, okay, so that's just his identity now. And no, now there's just nothing for that character, and it leads to a lot of backlash.
They're attaching that to what will be the legacy for the character that they probably liked at some point or had potential and hope for, and reintroduction of that character under a certain perspective is taken negatively. Like I'm sure a number of people who had that reaction probably didn't pick up the book to give it a shot based on the changes themselves. And so I'm sure if you read the book, you can comment on its quality, and that's a separate conversation. But I feel like a lot of it was just taking a singular look at, okay, now he is bisexual, he has aged. This doesn't seem right or appropriate in the sense of how the logic of comics works, or maybe even the logic for some people of how a person might change. And so it's easier to dismiss.
I think John Kent's a specific character too because you ever like try to leave a place and you go to like leave and exit the door and it was a pull, not a push, and you have that awkward moment where like, oh, you just hit it. John Kent did that with a door that said 5G on it, and everyone noticed. The other characters with
Sure.
5G at least were almost like created for 5G. Maybe Yada was created a little before that, but those characters didn't have enough of a spotlight on them for them to see the errors of that. John Kent, I think, had so much going on for him at the time that he was positioned to be something big and potentially for that 5G initiative that never fully happened. I mean, he was on the future state things. So when that was a non-starter, the spotlight was on the errors of John Kent. And I think that screwed the character up. I don't think they should have aged him up either. I think that was a Bendis issue, but I think those are two separate issues with the character, who has had many issues, unfortunately. So I think I don't want to say he gets unfair flack, but DC put a lot of eggs in in that basket, and that basket had a lot of holes in it. So yeah, I think that's a interesting case he is.
I want to make sure to disagree with this. Tevye Smolka says making him bisexual was a bad idea. I disagree with that vehemently. I have absolutely no issue whatsoever with his sexuality. The only problem that I have is the fact that it seems like DC doesn't know what the fuck to do with the character. That is the only problem I have.
In his sexuality, right? Like you could make that good based on story, but I think the fact that he is does not hamper the character. To an earlier comment being made, right? It only opens a potential, but that potential has to be realized.
And like they already aged him up. Like someone his age realizing they're bisexual is not out of the realm of possibility. And like they're like, what did we read in Absolute Power, that one shot with John
Oh yeah,
relatively recently? I think we all kind of enjoyed it.
It was
yeah.
awesome.
What else have they done with him since? Nothing. It's a constant series of false starts with him. That I think even the idea of his bisexuality was played with there with Dreamer and in Jay, and almost like a love triangle situation. It was like a challenger situation, and it hasn't gone anywhere really since. So I think there's more issues with the way DC has decided to put out John's stories rather than the characteristics themselves.
The choices they've made with the character hurt the character.
Hurt Damien too. He's catching strays in a way because Damien was so tied to John as the Super Sons that that book was doing good and it was well praised and they aged him up and then that left Damien at the wayside and they've tried to go back and tell like previously in continuity stories with those two, but it just doesn't work and it kind of hampered one of Damien's biggest supporting characters.
So many people in the comments talking about Super Sons. Wow.
Enjoy it.
People loved that book. I love that book. That was a great book.
I never read it.
And John, honestly, to be fair, like John as a kid and in his kind of introduction into DC Comics is what it was the first domino into me liking Superman in main continuity. Superman as a dad was all it took for me to be like, I get it, I understand. So I'm with him.
I think it gave something new for Damien as well.
Yep.
Because it was just that book was just John and Damien. And it was, it was a book that was literally just about their friendship. Whereas Damien's whole thing is he's the son of Batman. He needs nothing and no one. Oh, but here's a book that says actually he does need his friend. And then they ripped his friend away.
It's crazy because I think that when you look at the industry of comics, there are a lot of problems. There are a lot of issues. And yet I feel like the creative decisions, and largely I'm talking about the big two. The creative decisions are the ones that are most damaging and the ones that lead most to people dropping off. Like I'd be willing to bet that change is more like all new, all different, probably caused more people to drop off the book than the price increase. I think comics fans don't give a damn largely about all that other stuff as long as they're enjoying their comics. Because you can't even read comics if you don't have the ability to afford it, unless you are a pirate. So, like, you have to be able to spend the money to get the books. So you don't care if it's $3.99, $4.99, $5.99, as long as what happens inside it appeals to whatever crystallized sensibilities you have about what's acceptable and not. And I think that's absolutely fascinating.
Something that Tyler said regarding the change of John affecting other characters. I think to that, there was mentioned a little bit higher up, but Yara kind of got the short end of that, where her character became all but irrelevant. So I think there's also the fact that change can therein make other characters redundant, regardless of how they get received. Trinity now has effectively replaced what Yara Flor would ideally have become as one of that new Trinity, Damian, John, and now Wonder Woman's daughter, right?
Trinity.
Yeah.
Is there do you think there's more of a on the price question and what the idea that fans are just they're cool to pay whatever as long as they get their comics? Is there a feeling you think of maybe more control with characters and with stories in that I can express my voice and these things change or have the potential to change with the stories. But with something like price and, the actual like practicalities of it, that stuff is set in stone.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna pay for a comic because I want a comic, right? And
And if I want it and DC says it's $5.99, well, fuck me, I guess. But
yeah,
here you go.
what else am I gonna do? I'm gonna cut at worst. I'm maybe gonna cut another book to afford the books that I care about,
Oh,
or I'll
one
cut an
less
indie.
one less meal I have to eat. Well,
Nah,
I got to worship at the altar of Superman. What am I gonna do?
I gotta read JSA too, man.
No joke, that was me in college. Like,
No
I would.
joke. That's Sean next Thursday.
This Thursday.
How thin is Bean at this point?
My man's eating rats. Him and Wonder Woman. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. Like historically, comics fan, look at the level of, people talk about social media. Fuck that. Look at the level of people writing in to the letters pages for all time, going as far back as there have been letter pages in comics to write in and be angry and demand change or tell people they want the status quo kept as it is. This is the way of the comic book fan.
The one comic book moment that I wish I would have been around for, and it's actually my Grail comic, is Giant Size X-Men. I would have loved to have been around to see what the scuttlebutt of the comic shops was when X-Men is relaunched with a new Giant Size #1 with all new characters on it. Like the previous ones are in the background getting burst through, while Wolverine, a character that showed up in the Incredible Hulk a little while back, and then Storm. Oh, a Black Woman's on here too. Oh no. I would have loved to have seen that because I'm sure it probably was similar to what we have in more modern day comics, except social media didn't exist. I'm sure the smaller conventions at the time, it was probably a hot topic. You know what? That's lauded as one of the greatest comics and changes ever with Claremont's run.
Yeah, but I'm pretty sure the X-Men were not popular.
They weren't.
If I remember correctly, they were like near cancellation and they were only reprinting
They
books
were. Yep.
until Giant Size and stuff like that. So I don't think people clearly liked it.
I got to imagine there was some reaction though.
Well, I'm sure the OG fans, all
Yeah.
12 of them were like, "Yo, I can't. Can you believe what they're doing? They go to their shop and they're like, "Yo, you see this nonsense?" And the shop owner's like, "Oh, I don't know. I kind of liked it."
I don't know though. OG fans would have been getting it off newsstands.
Yeah,
You know,
this is
Oh,
proto
yeah,
pre-shop
yeah,
and all
true,
that, I
true,
think.
yeah.
So yeah,
Atomic Count says the original outrage I can remember was when Hawkeye became Goliath in Avengers.
there you go.
traded in his skirt for a leotard. Wow.
I forgot.
Why
he
were
was
people mad
Goliath.
about that? I'm curious. I want to know.
It's a title change, Sean. It's a mantle now. The Goliath is a mantle. No way.
How am I going to know where to pick up my Hawkeye book if it's called Goliath?
Did the arrows get big too? Were they like giant, Urukai trebuchet arrows sort of things? Or I don't know.
Get Shitty said this costs too much for it to not be a comfort food of a comic, a plausible reaction to changes. So what he's saying is, if I'm going to pay all this money, I want it to feel the way I want it to feel. And I definitely see that. Like, if a book doesn't feel the way I want it to feel, I'm not long for that book. And I'm with it, but does that not increase the crystallization process? If Captain America always has to be a certain way because the book costs $3.99 and that's expensive, and fans demand it to feel the way it felt when they were 10, is that fair to, Marvel? Who cares about Marvel? But is it fair to Marvel? Is it fair to the creative team that's coming on the book that wants to tell a story inspired by their lived experience and everything else, for it to have to stay the way you remember it when you were 10?
Or for you to remember it the way you had it at 20 or at 30. Like I think it's cyclical in that. And I think it's okay to feel like you want the story a certain way, but you can't become crystallized to it, because then from an art consumption standpoint, you're limiting the possibility of what you could enjoy if you don't give something a shot. If you don't allow yourself to feel uncomfortable in something familiar, because then you could find your next favorite series you just didn't know, because, well, it wasn't something that I had originally felt like was worth my time, because that's not how I remember it. That's not how I like it. But I think there's an element of getting over yourself to give yourself the shot, give the creative team the shot, give the publisher a shot, and then if you're giving it an arc, if you're giving it a couple of issues, fine. You've made your choice, but at least be proud that you allowed yourself the opportunity to be vulnerable there.
But do you have to?
Do you
It's your
have
money,
to?
right?
It's your money, sure, but I don't think that means you disparage the creator or the publisher.
But if you're saying I'm dropping off this book because I don't want this change and I don't care about this.
That's fine, but I don't think that means that you can go. I don't think that necessarily necessitates you going and saying, okay, well, this means that the creator is bad.
Well, again, like to me, that's outside of the extremes of it are not. That's weirdos. Like if you're gonna go on social media to blast a creator because you didn't like what they did, regardless of whether it sucked or not, that's still ridiculous. And that's not what we don't do that. We don't support that. I'm
Right.
talking about the regular person who says, I don't like me. I don't want to pay $3.99 to read a Jean Grey story that I don't like and that I don't think is right for that character. So what do you say to me?
Sean, drop the book, dude. You have too many pulls, man. That stack is huge. Just fucking let it go. Yeah, just let it go. And I think that's fine, because that is the thing that you're purchasing for sure. What was it, 67 books, some shit like that, dude? Come
It
on.
was stupid. Yeah, it was stupid. Way more than anyone should be buying.
Was he saying?
It's okay. It's still stupid. It is. You're
It's
right.
growing
It's getting better.
bigger.
James Jones makes a great point. If comic books never changed, we would all be reading comics that were like the Golden Age comics. If it doesn't evolve, the industry dies.
And I think that's where like my issue with like reactionary responses happens. Because in the moment, yes, it might feel shitty and might feel like what you don't want. But I think and maybe just because reactionary content is what gets clicks and it's what you see. But some people either lack the ability or don't want to look at things from the top down perspective and realize like, oh, that change will need to happen now just for it to work. Like the change will happen and it needs to happen, but eventually things kind of get to this baseline that what am I doing in my comic stuff? Like just really just like, dude, chill. You'll be fine. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
Just,
And sorry.
is there, please?
Dwight Baldwin says if a customer buys a product, they have a right to criticize it. Agreed. I mean, we do a whole show on that one Thursday, 6 p.m. Eastern. Check it, Pals Pulls. But to Tevia's point here, like I had problems with Zeb Will's Spider-Man run, but I didn't bash him on social media. Of course not, because that's not worth my time. I think that's the difference between providing critique and criticizing.
Yeah, Gavin points out you do have a right to criticize, but you should also know that no creator is trying to make a book that you specifically will be happy with.
Yeah.
That's a tremendous point, because you have to acknowledge the fact that these creators are also in it for the art of it. They're in it to tell a story. And like if you don't like it, you don't have to read it.
Kevin says, if I get a bad meal, I don't curse out the restaurant or chef. I made that choice and it's on me. You should tell it to my grandma. She likes to return things.
Unless it's a fried shoe. Oh, dude, I can't do that. That's so awkward.
What are you, Werner Herzog?
Are you Sean?
I mean, I definitely agree with that sentiment. Ultimately, and I keep saying, I don't think that people bashing creators is within our purview. That is a different kind of person than who I'm interested in talking about. Like I'm gonna go out on a limb and say that nobody who can hear me right now is doing that. Like no
Yeah.
one in this chat room, no one on this panel, nobody who listens to this show is doing that.
But I also think, like, personally, I don't think there's a need to bash the art either. Um, I think whenever I try to critique a comic, even Spawn, um, I say, like, oh, I don't like this, here's why. But that's just not for me. And I recognize that could be someone else's thing. And I think a lot of the reactionary responses to change becomes like, oh, this is just a blanket bad thing. Whereas, like, maybe sit back a bit and realize somebody might be into this. And if it's not enough people, then it doesn't sell and it changes.
Yeah, list out the grievances of the book. I mean, we critique art writing because it could just be bad too. Like in the sense that it could be not constructed well from a narrative standpoint, from a form standpoint. I think that's valuable. But you're right that somebody could be into it, but I'm sure we could uh, talk about that with some objectivity.
I think it's so interesting that no other creative field, no other medium goes through this the way we do. And maybe it's because our stuff, you don't it's like old-timey stories, right? Like Charles Dickens stuff was released periodically, so you get a chapter a month or something, much like we do now, but like that's the closest, you know, anything has ever been.
Can you believe what they did to Scrooge? I'm off. I'm dropping off now.
It's just it's so wild that we're sitting here having this conversation, but like, the publishing industry, which this whole thing is based around, you know, is it's not dying, but it's not healthy.
Do you think there are fans of, like, I don't know, like the Alex Cross series of books that go through the similar thing where, like, a new Alex Cross book comes out?
Well, that's the thing. Like, I guess that's sort of also what I'm getting around is like you buy a book, right? Like a full one, a real one with like words, and you pay $15. In this economy, you pay $15 and that's it. And then you go, ah, man, I didn't like that. I didn't like what they did with the character. I better go pick up the next one.
Because the publishing cycle isn't as immediate. So your
Yeah.
opinion can't really change that. It is very much a specifically comics thing. I don't even think it exists in manga. Marco or Kale, call me out on this if possible. Because manga is so singularly one creator's vision, it's not like one piece could be like, well, people aren't liking this. Your run ends in 5 issues.
No, because it comes out in like shonen magazines and like basically would effectively be anthologies. So you could, if your people don't have like buzz or don't come back for certain chapters of it, certain pages of it, they bump you, and that's it.
And
There's your manga.
I'd also say, like, especially in the case of like One Piece, right? That book is that story, that property is 1,000 chapters long or whatever.
It's 30 years.
So Oda has like repeated himself and neglected himself and contradicted himself. Shit's like the Bible at this point. Like, it's just, flipping over itself, to
People complaining about the Gospels be like, they need a new creative team. Put Paul on the next one.
that's it. That's it.
Mr. DC Comics with the 5 spot. Thank you, DC. Although I will say
Finally.
that considering that you are Mr. DC Comics, I think
Word.
you could do better than $5. But that would also explain why page rates are so low at DC, because Mr. DC Comics is doing this.
I was going to say, Mr. DC Comics, can we get on the press list, by the way? Just going to throw that out there.
Can I trade you back to 5 to get on the press list?
Thank
for
you,
a
Mr.
fucking
DC.
Dropbox link.
Please, Mr. DC. So Mr. DC says this is the difference, in my opinion, between the big two and manga. Western comic book heroes only go on missions to stop the villains. Manga heroes can grow.
Wait, apparently Izzy is telling me that my joke about the Gospels is actually how the Gospels were made.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Nah, man. I mean, I think you have different breadths of time. There are different stretches of time, and that's what happens over the course of uh, manga. But you have character growth and character change in big two comics all the time. Um, Whether or not they can regress to a certain point or back to a certain dynamic is different. I don't think that that means that there isn't growth there. I think uh, Western big two comics allow for rubber banding, whereas manga will show a singular change.
I think Get Shitty brings up another good point here, and I guess this is probably what I was trying to express too. He says, and if you're reading comics in floppy, you're experiencing it in such piecemeal. Often you can't see the forest for the trees, and then maybe it's fuck this tree in particular. It's a fair point.
And that's, and I sort of alluded to that with the with my Peter Parker thing, revealing his identity. It's like, but it was used later, to advance the character, you know, ostensibly to one more day, but just before one more day, if you put that at the cutoff, like the stuff up to that was really good.
Dwight Baldwin with the 4.99. Thank you, Dwight. Appreciate you. If readers don't like the next Game of Thrones novel, they will go nuts. That is absolutely a fact.
Well, Dwight, I have good news for you. It's not coming out, so you don't need to worry about that.
You don't have to. Don't even
Yeah,
think about it.
yeah.
Honestly, it to an earlier comment made about Oda and One Piece. If One Piece stops getting published, we revolt.
It just
That's
hit.
it, dude. It's burning down.
It just hit an unannounced 2 week hiatus, so people are already freaking out. Like this happened today or something like that.
Yo, stop.
Chat, what's the change you can't handle? Is there any change that you feel like they do this? This is the third rail. It could be anything. I know what mine is.
What's yours?
Price. If the standard price of comics becomes higher than $4.99, I am out the door.
Fully, or are you just cutting things in half?
I think I'll be out the door because that's ridiculous.
Well,
For 20 or 22 pages of comics a week or a month to be $5.99 on a consistent basis, I just can't see it.
It's gonna be bad for Pals Pulse.
I mean, it'll be bad for the comics, pals.
Is there a because I think we could all agree that price is a problem across the board. And, like there is a line we all drop off at a certain point, or at least there's a line for me that where I just go to trade. But is there a story thing that could get you to be like, all right, throw my cards up, I'm out?
On the industry, no. I mean, Marvel rebooting would probably cause me to not read Marvel anymore.
Here's
Liar.
No, I'm not. I'm not lying. I'm not lying. The biggest draw of Marvel Comics is the fact that they have never rebooted. Everybody who says otherwise is wrong. That is the biggest draw of Marvel Comics. Because you never have to question whether or not what you read happened.
It's weird though, because like I agree. I don't think Marvel's. We have a whole episode about that. But I'd still read it. I'd still check it out. I'm still morbidly curious. Like I'm trying to think if there's something that would be a bridge too far for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it.
Be like an individual character. Like I'd throw my hands up and I was like, oh, over it. But the next issue that gets announced or the next series of that, once we get a creative team change, oh, Hey, it might be good. I'll come back in on that one.
Big sweeping changes always feel like the cliffhanger at the end of a Dragon Ball Z episode. Like I still want to know what happens next on Dragon Ball Z. You know, even if right now it feels shitty and I don't like it, and my reaction to it is, "Whoa, hold on now." I still want to know what happens next. And I think that that's one of the benefits and the things I like about comics is that there's always a next for Big Two.
The problem is, to me, a reboot ends that. There is no next. Now there's new. Next is over.
Isn't there then their new next?
But the next of what we were just engaging with, there is no next. That's it. Like it's done. There is no next of the pre-New 52
Mm.
DC. That ended.
Well, for some titles.
Okay. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah.
It ended. So that like I understand that there are a lot of people who said that is my jumping off point. I'm done now. Because it hurt them. I would never, ever, ever want Marvel to say goodbye to the 60 plus years of Spider-Man history. I could never accept that.
Get shitty letting us know that a single floppy in Canada is around $7 now. The exchange rate there is bad.
Yo, in New Zealand, a standard trade was like $30.
Whoa.
Like a Marvel, whatever, pick your title trade.
5 issue, 6 issue.
Yeah.
Damn.
If that.
And not even hardcover.
Yeah.
Damn.
Mr. Hijack says if they stop using human artists, I am with you on that 100%.
Yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah.
okay. Actually, I think that might be it. I've been racking my brain this whole time trying to figure it out. I think that might be it. The industry moves in any significant way toward AI, I think I would be out.
But I think that's for me, like the stuff that would take me out of comics is all industry based. Price, AI. If there's something came out where they were treating people horribly, that might get me to jump off some titles. Storyline wise, though, I think I'm just game. Show me what you got.
I'll pretty much give just about anything a try because I have to, because Sean tells me I have to. But if I'm also very willing to just drop it if I don't like it. Unless Sean tells me I can't. But the if a pitch is solid and I can sort of see where it could go, I'm in.
There's always a degree creatively of let them cook, in my eyes.
Yeah. Yeah. Because there are good creators out there.
I just love comics too much.
Yeah.
Agreed.
And I'm like, even with price, like, okay, I won't go buy a floppy, but I'll wait it out and I'll go buy it, or I'll go to the library and get it a few years later. Damn y'all. y'all chill.
Really flip the script there.
Yeah, I'm not gonna stop, man. It's just good storytelling.
I'll start making my own bad choices in comic books.
Thonder says Sean is a dictator. Gavin Guidry says, why are you so bossy, Sean? Someone's got to be the boss. You know how it is.
Cracks the whip.
Atomic Hound. This is what I'm looking for. I nearly quit 3 times. Early 90s with a glut of titles, publishers and gimmicks. Start of New 52, considered it for a minute. And DCU. 5G would have done it if the 5G files were correct.
Wow.
Okay, Hound, you say 5G would have done it, but you also say Start of New 52 considered it for a minute. Would you have considered it for a minute for 5G too? Like there are things like with comics too, where I feel like it's on paper, it's like, oh, I don't like that. But then you hear one person read it and be like, well, no, it's pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I was into 5G.
I wasn't not into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Atomic Hound is in that class of reader, though, where it's like you've been reading comics for so long that when they tell you the Superman you love is not Superman anymore, and there's some new kid who's Clark Kent, and he's allegedly Superman, but he's got red eyes and he's not afraid to show them off, and he's throwing people off buildings. I can see that being go away. I can absolutely see that being the moment where you say, I'm off this.
And I wonder if reading comics consistently throughout the 90s, like Hound has, immunizes you to this to a certain extent, because there was a lot of that change. It was Omar from Near Mint talks about how Onslaught almost took him off X-Men. And in fact, I think it did, right?
He did stop reading comics. Yeah. It's
So
a real thing. People stop.
if you can get through the 90s, I think you're good going forward, dude. Like, you've seen the worst of it.
It's just like when you look at the sales from the early 90s to now, clearly hundreds of thousands of people have stopped reading comics. So something is causing that. And I am always interested in what is the root cause. Is it comics fans not being able to accept change?
I think that's a bigger topic about technology.
If the answer is technology, then that could be what it is.
And I think it's the publisher maybe not changing to adapt to that. But
I think that's salient. I think readers are more open to change than we might expect or give them credit for, but it's up to the publisher to make it meaningful and story driven, to be able to not meet expectation of the readership, but rather to allow the readership the opportunity to explore. And you'll get people leaving regardless. You'll get people on regardless. But I would imagine a good percentage of people also stick it through, because comics readers stick through the highs and the lows, because that's the nature of periodic storytelling.
But what gives you the impression that comic book readers are that resilient? Like other than your feeling, what evidence do you have to suggest that?
Comics have been around for how many years? I don't know. Like the pure nature of
100.
readership and consumption of art gives me that confidence. Art won't die. Comics won't die.
Art won't die from AI Marco.
Won't, dude.
Robots will make it. Don't worry.
No.
Mr. Hijack says, don't readers kind of dictate what matters anymore? Mainline, Murphyverse, Absolute, etc. I think that people are more willing to engage with non-mainline stories as long as those spaces are high quality.
The creative vision has to shine more in those spaces. Like, I think back when, like, the Ultimate Universe, not the current iteration of the Ultimate Universe, but like post Miles, when it kind of soft rebooted, do you know? Or like it wasn't a full reboot, but it was more of a relaunch with other titles, and that didn't land because creatively it wasn't really there. There was no cohesion between it all. So I think those things are a lot more creator based, and the reception to them is based around that.
Marley says, let's go all re-listen to the 5G files. Love the deep dives. Check it out, new listeners. Thank you, Marley, for plugging that, and I hope you're feeling better. 5G files was a lot of fun, and if you are curious about the story that would have gotten Atomic Hound to stop reading comics, then you can't read it, but you can go listen to us talk about the 5G files.
Sounds like a bleeding cool headline.
And as a tease, Atomic Hound says, if Batman condoned Joker killing Bane and Superman became an authoritarian figure, I would be done. Yeah. I'm sure there are a lot of people who feel like that.
Thank Definitely. God for Morrison sort of saving the Superman part of it.
For real. Kingdom of Nerds says, I've been reading comics since 1984. People have been saying comics are dying since before I was born. It's nothing new. Comics will always be here in one form or another. Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think that's in question. Okay. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I think the answer is that we can accept change. Some of us. Sometimes some of us can accept some of the changes, and some of us can't. And I think, we see drop offs, but people come back too. Comic books are very interesting in that way. It's very similar to wrestling. When wrestling is in a down period, people stop watching and they swear it off and they say they're done and they'll never watch it again. And then they come back. I've got friends who weren't watching for 20 years who are now blowing my phone up to ask me about various things happening in the world of wrestling because it's hot right now. That's just how this thing works.
You put Rhea Ripley there. That'll get people's eyes on the product. But I think wrestling is the most apt comparison to comic books in a lot of ways, and I think in this way as well, it works.
Figure Drawing says, regarding the interest of DC and Marvel, they are succeeding in large part because they are not mainline or safe. Comics overall equals rehash times infinity. That's in reference to Absolute and Ultimate. We'll see. I agree with you in the moment, but I don't want to become a prisoner of the moment because a year will pass. And then a year after that, when do those comics stop feeling new and fresh and bold and exciting? That requires effort over a long stretch of time. It's not enough. Like, one of the biggest problems that I have with initiatives in general is that they present a new idea up front and then everything is old. The storytelling conventions feel old. It's the same creators. It feels like spinning of the wheels with a fresh coat of paint, and I could do without that. So will they fall into those same trappings? We'll see. Time will tell. We've got a lot more show to do. Really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Over 100 of you tapped in with us right now. Thank you for that. Make sure you smash the like button if you've been enjoying what we are doing. I do want to remind you that we have got a new show coming this Monday that you guys will be able to watch. Channel members can watch it early, so hopefully if you're a channel member, you'll give that a look and give us some feedback. What are your thoughts on what we're doing over there on this new show? Really want to hear from you guys on that. Thank you to everybody who has answered the form that we put out, the feedback form. That has been hugely helpful. We've got right now it says 114 responses, which is way more than I anticipated. So really appreciate you guys for that. Throwing it in the chat again. I figure there's probably still a few of you who would be willing to do it, who haven't yet. It's totally anonymous. We're not collecting information about you or data. So if you're one of those people, you don't have to worry about that. It is totally anonymous. Atomic Hound says the new show is great. Thank you, Atomic Hound, for that. Appreciate you sharing the good word about our show. Appreciate you.
And the long-lost Baldwin brother, Dwight Baldwin, says, with a super chat for $1.99, says, people's tastes change over time as well.
Yeah, that is true. It's lost to time, but there was a comment from somebody who said, I have long since stopped reading mainline comics. I recognize it's not because the stories are bad. I've just changed. And I don't know who that was, but that is exactly what I'd love to see. The ability to say, hey, this isn't for me anymore. That's cool. Figure Drawing says the average fan is coddled way too much. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think there's sometimes I think there are too many expectations on the part of fans to be a certain way. Like, I think if you don't like something, it's cool to not like it. And you don't need a reason. You can just not like it. Patreon. Go ahead, Kim.
Sorry. The form, the
Yeah.
feedback form. Marley wants to know if there's a deadline on that. Do the listeners need to fill that in before a certain amount of time?
No, I don't think so. Like, we'll always look. I will at least always look at it and use it. We'll do another one eventually. We've done like one a year or something like that for the last few years. So yeah, please fill it out whenever you get the chance. It's great to hear from you guys. I'll be honest. Reading some of the feedback that we got was very deeply emotionally impactful for me because even though we do this live every week, outside of those times where we're live, we're kind of in a silo, and seeing so many nice comments, so many things that you guys appreciate and enjoy about what we do. Some things that surprise me that you even noticed. Some of you are really paying attention, and that's cool to see. And just the kindness, man. You guys are amazing. We're really fucking lucky. I genuinely believe that. We are really, really lucky to have cultivated the audience that we have.
Except for Catherine, who just wrote me filling out the form. Where is the backflip? And Sean must dress up at the next Hellfire Gala. We don't condone Catherine. We should block her. We should shove her out as quick as we can.
Wow.
Well-
Comics Pal's not accepting of women. Hate to see it. Jeez.
And I will repeat what Tyler said earlier. The Comics Pals don't endorse that statement. That is a Kale statement. I'm a big fan of Catherine. And also, I want to say the second half of what you asked for. Sure, the next Hellfire Gala that happens in Marvel, I will absolutely dress up Catherine. That is my word, and my word is bond.
I'll put Sean in Trixie Mattel makeup for that one.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
The next time it happens
For
in
the
comics,
next
I will.
Hellfire
Yep,
Gala.
no problem. No problem. Not an issue. A lot of people still sounding off on the main topic, Flaming Jelly Beans. What's up, Flaming Jelly Beans? Says, personally, the longer I've been reading comics, the more open to change I become. It always comes back to the status quo anyways, you know? Just give it time. Valid.
Yep.
Valid.
Easy.
Hendrik Perry says, that happened to me with a lot of manga. Began to realize I was reading some that I started years ago out of self-imposed obligation rather than personal enjoyment.
Viral says, dress up like Emma Frost, Sean.
Sure. At the next Hellfire Gala, whatever you guys want. We'll put up a poll. Whatever cosplay you want to see me in most, we can go with that. No
Gail
problem.
Simone, if you're watching, you have the opportunity to do the funniest shit ever.
If Gail
Bro.
Simone is watching, Gail, I'll tell you this personally. I'll do anything you want me to do. Just come on the show.
Hey,
Just come
hey,
on the show.
Gavin. Hey, Gavin. You have the opportunity to do something, to do the funniest thing right now.
Well, Gavin said, I'll email Brevoort right now. If you email Brevoort right now, ask him whatever you want. Just slip in there. Hey, the Comics Pals would love to have you come on the show. I would love to talk to Tommy B.
Honestly, that's a great one. I would love to have a conversation
In
with him.
full costume, Sean.
I'll trade you. Whatever you want. Whatever you want. I'll put myself on the line.
You'll even have the boots on. We won't see it, but you'll have the boots to hear the little like clink 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 of the shackle thing.
I'll ask to see it.
Mike Hank says, wish we got the comic sheriff. Listen, I am the comic sheriff. So that means that you don't have to wish. All things are possible eventually. In comics and in the Comics Pals.
What you don't know is Sean is constantly wearing assless chaps like a sheriff. You just can't see it on the show.
Like
I
Mike
can prove that wrong right now.
We're good.
You won't.
I won't.
Okay, you got to jump. All right, he's got.
Damn,
sweats
imagine
on.
if he
He's got
was.
sweats.
Not assless. I do this podcast with pants on.
That makes
Full
a lot of
ass.
Did anybody watch the Tyson fight last night?
dude.
It's the
My man's
most
ass-
boring elder abuse ever.
That aside, my man's ass was all up on the camera. After he did an interview, he turned around, and I don't understand what the production was awful last night.
Yeah.
But he turns around and his full ass is exposed.
And the camera kind of panned on it.
It zoomed
for like
in.
a second. No,
Yeah.
Listen,
'cause
you
he
gotta-
realized he did something wrong. It was supposed to stay on the top half. My dude, it was so funny because it was finishing an interview with his son. Love you, son. Turns around, cheeks flapping in the wind,
Full
bro.
ass.
Double
This
cheeked up.
this
on a
cameraman saw a shot and he said, "Look, I gotta take it."
He took it.
He's like,
Fired.
it's buffering anyway. Nobody's gonna be able to see this.
Fired. Yo, the one time a 6-second delay should have been properly like utilized.
See, you say fired, Marco, but here's the kicker. If you watched the entire show, at the end, they did a recap and showed everything, like showed clips of what happened. And in that clip rehash, they showed his ass again.
Again?
Yeah, it was on
Again.
purpose. That was totally on purpose.
Like, why? Why did we need to see it twice?
Yo,
Clicks.
I saw that and I'm like, clip it. Somebody immediately.
He was
That
wearing a Versace thong.
That's a cod
Well,
piece. You're
listen.
supposed to wear that while you box.
Yeah, you make the money Tyson does. You Versace's dirt.
Whoa, speaking of value out here, Kingdom of Nerds, thank you so much. Not only joining us as a sidekick on the YouTube tier, but 5 gifted memberships. We got Cole, we got Venom Mark, what's up? 200 words per minute. I'd like to see you prove that. Ruben
Wow.
Reyes and Sanji.
Hey, Sanji. Hey, Kingdom of Nerds, Brucifer, thank you so much. I don't say this enough. Kingdom of Nerds is a cool YouTube channel that you guys should check out too. Brucifer has been rocking with us for a long, long time, and he's trying to get it done over on his channel. So, thank you, Kingdom of Nerds, and congratulations to everybody who just became a channel member. That means that you have access to watching our new show whenever you want. It debuts for everybody on Monday, but you guys have early access. Do you know what happens when somebody gifts subs on this channel?
An angel gets its
Comics
wings.
Pals gets Versace thongs.
Yeah, now we can each afford a Versace thong. Well, probably not.
I already got
So we'll
mine.
gift it to Marco. We'll give Marco the Versace thong.
Oh,
You know
thank
what?
you.
I'm gonna Google how much Versace thong
It's
is.
not a budget.
I gotta know.
I don't think
I gotta
they
know.
exist. They
We
don't
could use the
exist.
comics bucks to get Marco a Versace thong.
And then that'll be the assless chaps on this podcast.
Yeah, but then you can't show that off on YouTube because YouTube is
So you know what? Actually, listeners, I have it on right now. You just can't see
OnlyFans.
It's
They're
only
anti-ass.
$75. Like MeUndies is almost that expensive.
it.
75. Oh shit! All right, yeah, we could all
That's not
have.
bad. That's
yeah.
easily in the budget.
Marco deserves more expensive lingerie.
Yeah, for real.
Yeah. Spend on me.
The work Marco does, please.
Well, we're gonna spend on the channel members right now because Brucifer Kingdom of Nerds was kind enough to gift some subs, so we're gonna gift right back. We're gonna spin it and gift 5 subs out right now. So congratulations to Tevya Smolka, Mike McMahon. I like you, Mike McMahon. I don't like all McMahons, but you I like. Kerry Tanner, congratulations. Nighthawk and Tate. Good for all of you. Happy to see it. Benjamin loudly popping off with the 20 spot. Thank you, Ben. Appreciate you,
Wow.
brother. Says the professional wrestling comparison was apt, especially when comparing comic stories with wrestling's expected heel face turns. The main difference is that wrestling fans are a part of the product and can dictate storylines. Ben, you are 100,000% on point. I have been wanting to make a video about wrestling and comics and the similarities for a long time because there are a ton of similarities.
Is there a a Daniel Bryan moment in comics?
It's a great question. So, for context, Tyler is asking if there has ever been a time where a character was popular amongst the audience, but not pushed or not utilized by the publisher, and then the publisher had to respond to the audience's desire for that character.
Because even I think like Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, had a lot of a cult following, once she changed to Captain Marvel. But even then, that was kind of by design. So I can't even consider that.
I
Her
don't know.
push was, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I feel like that was by design necessarily.
Well, by design in the sense that they already had plans to make that character important.
Oh, yeah.
I have no doubt in my mind that that's true.
So it
That-
wasn't audience driven.
Exactly.
you're saying.
Sure, there
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
cult
I see,
following,
I
but the
see.
plans were already in place. Like the
Right.
the
Right.
pieces were already moving.
Gosh, even though I think that's a great question, Tyler, I'm not sure if I have an answer.
Yeah, I'd have to sit on that one for a bit. I'm really curious because there's got to be.
I think, though, that speaks to what Ben is saying, that the audience of wrestling is a part of the product, whereas we are not a part of the product.
Yeah.
I don't think that the big two react to us as much as we think they do or as much as we would like them to.
The Jason Todd wouldn't count.
No.
I don't
Well,
think so.
no.
Because
that's
Flaming
also by
Jelly
design.
Bean says Jason Todd got the opposite of the Daniel Bryan moment.
yeah, they knocked him
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. X23, Pete Collins throws out X23. I could sort of maybe see that.
At least in her longevity. Like on any other character, that character would have stopped after NYX. Maybe, but like
It's tough.
I'm talking about like hitting high highs that Daniel Bryan did, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it exists.
No. I think we should do it for Chasm though.
I'm not going to support that.
Okay. All right. Just trying.
I'll support it for Sideways.
You know what? I'm in. Yeah, I'm back.
What are we doing for Chasm? I missed it. I'll do it for Chasm.
I'm just saying we just start a huge fan movement that gets him on the Avengers.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool.
But he's bad.
So,
All right. Dan says comics don't get an immediate reaction like wrestling either. It's hard to ignore boos or the crowd going ice cold. Yep. And I also think, well, let me not say that. I'll move on. Patreon.com/the Comics Pals is the best way to support us. We've gotten a lot of support today already. You guys have been incredible. Thank you for that. Deeply, deeply appreciate it. Patreon is the way to go the extra mile, as a lot of you already have. What I want to do is I want to read off some of the shout outs now and then do the rest later. We're going to start splitting this bad boy up because there are so many of you. So I want to say a special shout out to our PalsVerse legends, Thunderstruck Rebecca Alejandro, the Hound of Justice, Atomic Hound, who was in the chat, Starcrossed Catherine Stars, who was in the chat, Red Spiral Storm, who is in the chat watching us as he plays MLB 2006. That's a throwback.
06. Wild.
Orseus the Waterbound, Adam and Bernie the Best Boy. And thank you to PalsVerse members, the Night Stalker, Harris Dajinski, Brian Demolisher Del Pozo, Catfish the Incorruptible, Momentum Mike Elliott, Dan the Truth Trudeau's with us, Jalen the Sanguine Sorcerer, Marley Manastorm, who's with us, Slow Flow Dammer, and Christian Uncaged, who's with us. Always laughing. The Spear of Justice, Izzy's Issues, who is in the chat. The Great Destroyer, Hyper Viper 89, Robert Runback Cashaback, Pete the Dreamweaver Collins, who is in the chat, Matthew Malice Price, who is in the chat, and James Just Jamming Jones, who is in the chat. Thank you all so much. We will get through the rest of the list a little bit later on. I also want to announce for the main show that the Grant Morrison Book Club has reached a result. You guys voted over on Patreon, and you have chosen the book that I would say I'm glad, because this is where I live. Batman by Morrison. So we're going to do, essentially, a lot of people have pointed out accurately, it's basically the first omnibus-ish worth of Grant's work. So Batman and Son, The Black Glove, and Batman R.I.P. with a special bonus of Return of Bruce Wayne for those of us who have the time to get through it. I am beyond excited. This is a little known fact. The other guys will know it. There was a time when I was trying to do a show called Comicstalgia, and we were going to present the Batman story week over week. I was so excited to do a deep dive into that. And we never got to do it for different reasons. But this will allow me to finally say the things that I have had on my mind about this series that I've never had a space to talk about before.
Sean's going to make the controversial statement. I love Batman.
They're going to say the controversial statement that this isn't good.
I mean,
please. What?
if you want to hear my controversial statement, I'll make it now. My controversial statement is it's fine.
Yeah.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm with that.
That is a controversial statement. Okay.
I'm with that.
All right.
It's also a lie. It's a Marco type,
Oh, we call a callback in the biz.
Yeah. The Dark Knight Returns is a fine comic.
Solid.
Yeah, solid. This is going to be going down on November 26th. So you've got time enough, I think, to read most of this, if not all of it. We're going to be reading all of it, so you should too. And come prepared to talk about it. It's going to be fun.
And if you're traveling to go see family, and you got some time on a plane, or you're a passenger in a car and you don't get car sick, you got lots of time to read.
Hell yeah. Bring it on. Come hang out with us. It's gonna be fun. Gavin Gidry said, when I come on the show and give it when can I come on the show and give an insider's perspective? I'm ready for my heel turn.
Brother, you come on right now.
If you want to book it, if you want to book it, Gavin, and just make this deal official, what's happening next week?
Don't we might have something next week?
We're pushing it for Gavin. Doesn't matter.
I actually have no clue what you're talking about, Tyler.
I'll message you on the thing. I don't want to.
Okay. Well, either way, Gavin, I do believe that the time has come. So we need to bring you on here and have a chit chat. And if you're ready to make your heel turn, then I'm very interested
Let's
in hearing
go.
what you have to say. One of my favorite things we get to do is have creators on the show and speak openly and honestly. And Gavin is a very
Yeah.
down to earth, honest dude. So I actually am very intrigued as to what you're going to come on here and say.
We're free next week. I lied.
Yeah. Yes, we are. So if you are also free next week, Gavin, this is an official invitation.
He's just working. Gavin just working.
Yeah. Yeah. So bring it on, brother. Come hang out with us. Dan says this is a solid podcast. Well, I like to think we're a little more than solid, but hey, everybody has their own taste, Speaking of Dan, before we move forward with the show, I wanted to take this moment to share this out. Because Dan is dealing with a loss in the family, a family friend, a woman whose kids now no longer have their parents in their lives. And Dan is sharing out this GoFundMe for anyone who has, the ability to help out and contribute to some children who are now unfortunately parentless, and will definitely need all the help that they can get right now. So I'm gonna share that GoFundMe link with you guys here as soon as my computer starts to act right. Because we're all here to have fun and games, and comics are great and we all love it. But there are real things happening in this world, and there are people who need our help and support. So
I got that link in the chat.
okay, perfect. Thank you, because my computer is not helping. So yeah, if you guys have the ability, if you have the means, any donation amount is not too small. So thank you.
It's a GoFundMe link. It's not a scam. Please, anyone, go help a comics pal.
Hell yeah. Speaking of Grant Morrison, let's get into our top 5. We've been doing for the whole month of November our Grant Morrison top 5, their best work in our opinion. We've been sharing our list, and we are actually up to number 2. We're up to number 2. If you want to share your top 5 with us, please leave it in the chat. Love to read that. But Marco, why don't you kick us off with your number 2?
My number 2 is drumroll, Doom Patrol. So I spoke about 7 Soldiers of Victory last week, where we saw a lot of for me, Grant pushing the comic book medium, and in Doom Patrol, I think they went a step further. The things that blow my mind are still the elements of Dadaism and bringing in these art movements to try to say something not only about the characters themselves, but about what art itself is and how you can play with that in the comic book medium. Mr. Nobody is an incredible concept of just not existing on a page and what that means. It blew my mind, and for me, continued to push what I thought was really effective storytelling and communication. That's my biggest thing. I think one of my newsletters early on was actually talking about some of these panel breakdowns from that first volume of Doom Patrol. Or at the very least, I have them marked off specifically so I can go back and take a look at what those things are. And yeah, incredibly influential book for me in how I can think about comics, and that's one of the things that I appreciate about Grant. they always operate on a different level. I feel like where the text, then you have the subtext, and then Grant's under that. So I really love the work being done there, or the work that was done there, and I always tip my hat to it.
Awesome. Yeah, I gotta finish that because we did some of that for the book club and it was awesome. But I gotta go back and get through that.
Yeah, I think the entirety of the run is phenomenal.
How about you, Tyler? Oh, go ahead, Kale. Sorry.
I was gonna say, yeah, that and the Invisibles. I'm desperate to get to them.
I'll go then. My number 2 is Animal Man. Uh, Animal Man is one of my favorite runs of all time. My one and two are probably in my top 5 comics of all time. So 2 of them are Morrison. Animal Man. There's just some amazing stuff that Morrison does. Morrison does the thing that can kind of be hokey for some writers, where they write themselves into the book. Uh, they do that in Animal Man, but it works. This is back when Grant had hair too. So looking back at it, I'm like, oh, that's Grant. I forgot. Um, and it's Animal Man talking to not his creator but his writer who dictates what happens. And there's also that one issue with the coyote, which is essentially Wile E. Coyote, and it's this constant cycle of a death and rebirth and the futility of it possibly, and all of that in Animal Man. And there's some amazing stuff done in that book, but all in the context of the DC universe, which I think is expertly done. Um, where anytime Animal Man shows up in a book, I'm excited because I just love that character thanks to Grant.
Hell yeah.
I can't believe my number 2 is my number 2 when Animal Man should have been my number 2. Mine in that case, my number 2 is Multiversity.
Oh,
And I think specifically for the famous one that I forget, that's the Watchmen uh uh uh, uh you know parody. It's not a parody, pastiche. Maybe it's a pastiche. Uh where it uses the actual Charlton characters, sort of the way Alan Moore intended, and it um you can read it forwards and backwards and get an entirely coherent story
What?
out of it. Like, that's insane. Um, I I really enjoyed what Grant built with Multiversity, and the depth and the different aspects of the various things that Grant is interested uh, in superhero comics and in Grant's personality and life. And I think that book is so interesting in uh, the Pax Americana. Thank you, Get Shitty. Um, I think that book is a relic that will be looked back on at a certain point, similar to like the Invisibles and Doom Patrol, as like a really solid um look at who Grant Morrison is and the way they write and what they're trying to say. um I just think it's a strong, fascinating book that is underrated.
Damn, you just made me want to read that again.
Again, yeah, we read that a long time
Yeah.
ago.
I don't remember getting that much out of it. I didn't realize you could read that shit backwards and forwards.
Yeah, that Pax Americana. Yeah,
Holy
didn't we did that?
shit.
Didn't we?
I don't think so.
oh,
I
I
don't
don't.
remember doing that.
Yeah, no.
Oh yeah, yeah. Y'all got to do that. Get on that.
Damn, dude. That's crazy.
That's because that's the Frank Quitely one too.
It was a great issue.
Yes, yes. Yeah. My number 2 is New X-Men. I New X-Men is the first omnibus I ever got. I bought it without a knowledge of who Grant Morrison was. I bought it without a knowledge of who Frank Whiteley was. I bought it off the basis of loving the X-Men and wanting to read the best X-Men stories that had been told. And when I went on IGN.com and I went on superherohype.com, everybody was talking about new X-Men. This is 2006.
Did you say superherohype.com? Sheesh.
Yes, bro. Did you used to go on there too?
Yeah.
Yeah, dog.
Was that in comicmovie.com?
I never went there really. But that place was the shit. The forums there. Anyway,
Yeah.
I did not expect new X-Men at all. I thought I was going to get a big, bombastic superhero story that felt like the cartoon because that was my biggest frame of reference. And I was wrong. And I am so grateful that I was wrong. It is a big, heady story that asks questions about the X-Men that I had never even necessarily considered before. What does evolution mean? What does it mean for them to be the next stage in human evolution? Is that something that could bother people? Could that bother humans? What's the human reaction to that beyond just getting mad? What about the planning? What about the technology? And new X-Men used all those ideas. What about the mutants who aren't pretty? What about the non-Jean Greys? What about the Beaks of the world? You know, are they still valuable? It was a big time statement to me about humanity because not all of us are superstars, not all of us are celebrities, not all of us are pretty, but we all have something special about us. We all have talent. We are all, important. And Grant managed to tell that story while including the drama, the interplay that we all come to the X-Men for. And it was all beautifully rendered, in my opinion. I know a lot of people don't feel this way, but beautifully rendered by Frank Quietly, who I think did a tremendous job. It's a shame that Marvel essentially retconned this run out of existence because of some of the decisions that they made. But boy, oh boy, if it isn't a stellar piece of work by everybody involved and a must read for any X-Men fan. Love, love, love it. Now, it appears that we are learning now through the chat. I saw Jeanette in the chat, right? I saw the name Jeanette and I got excited. So my mind skipped ahead and I was like, Jeanette Kahn is watching us and saying hello. It's not Jeanette Kahn. It's Jeanette Kunalata who says, happy birthday, Marco.
Marco got his whole ass on here and didn't tell us it was his birthday.
Are you the type that's like, I don't want to deal with
I don't want attention. Leave me alone.
I can tell. Yeah. It's not on your Facebook. That's how I know.
But what I don't like about that is that you robbed us of an opportunity to build a show with the idea of burning your ass for it being your birthday.
Oh, a roast?
Of course.
Oh no.
We've done a me roast on my birthday.
Is that a birthday thing now? I don't want that.
Well, we did not that we have to. We did.
Okay.
We I told you guys, do your worst. Marco deprived us of that opportunity.
Whew. Dodged a bullet.
It's in my phone now, though, so I can't forget ever. Honestly, I'm so bad with birthdays. If it's on Facebook, I'll remember because it gives me an alert.
Yo, I take it off at every social platform.
I can tell. I just checked.
Yeah.
But then again, Kale, Tyler, do you guys remember the birthday of your computer? Like, do you remember? Like, do you have an awareness of that? No, people don't take note of that, right?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's true. It just kind of fades into your memory. You don't even remember when you got it.
Right.
You can just go in the command line and figure it out.
Marco, tip typing away over there.
Ah.
Well, happy birthday, Marco.
Thanks. I'm so good about everything else except the tension on me.
Huh.
Happy birthday, Marco.
He can only handle it for 1 minute.
Speaking of 1 minute.
Oh, no.
Since it is Marco's birthday, why don't we do my least favorite segment? Why don't we do a Marco's minute and give Marco exactly 1 minute with no more time than that to say anything that Marco feels like saying as a birthday gift. Here you go, Marco. Your time starts now.
I'm currently in the process of reading one of the most emotionally wrenching manga, Goodnight Poon Poon. I'm
Oh
on
yeah.
the
Yeah,
sixth
yeah, yeah.
volume. I am halfway through, and just the other day, literally on the train to work, I am flipping through a quarter of the sixth volume, and man, there was a page turn that I had to put the book down and just look around at my surroundings. It was a page turn, no context for you guys. You guys won't understand this, but I turned the page and it said, "Good morning, Poon Poon." I said, "Oh, that's it. All right, I need a break. I need a second. Need a second. Processing a lot of feeling, a lot of feeling, a lot of feeling." Immediately opened back up and started just consuming pages. I highly recommend this book to anybody who's out there. Inio Asano is
Done.
incredible.
You're looking at Poon Poon on the public transport?
Oh,
Oh
trust me,
my.
it's risky. Trust me, it's risky.
Damn.
Because there's some Poon Poon.
Can you can you imagine being on the train? Hold on. Being on the train and someone next to you looking at Poon Poon, as it were,
I
This is me sometimes.
shutting the book, putting it down, standing up and having to pace up and down the train car once or twice. He's sweating. Oh.
that
There are
man
moments,
that man can't handle his Poon Poon.
And then he sits down, he picks it up, it's right in his face, and he starts really flipping through it.
and there are some sequences and scenes where I have to like, because I'm on the train. I have to be like, I'm like, I'll turn the page.
Dude, I was reading Howard Chaykin's Black Kiss on the train once. I understand that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chaykin book will do that.
Excellent, excellent. God,
Beautiful.
comics.
Hope you enjoyed your minute. Hope everybody else enjoyed Marco's minute. Let's also say happy birthday to Ruben Reyes, who says, "Hey, pals, I was just gifted a membership, and just so happens that today is my birthday. Can I get a shout out?" Yes, you can, Ruben.
Hell
Happy,
yeah,
happy,
Ruben.
happy birthday. That's awesome.
Let me
Yo,
get
stop
you a
stealing my
birthday
thunder.
hot dog.
We have
Yeah, he's trying to
birthday
he's trying
info.
to steal your moment, Marco.
Yeah, what the fuck?
It sounds like you don't
Should we
want
give-
it, Marco. So
I didn't. Yeah, please
Yeah.
take it.
Should
you
we
go.
give Ruben a Marco minute?
To
Ruben,
type
do you
away.
want a minute? What would you like to say?
Wow.
whole minute. Is that we have too many listeners now? Everyone's gonna get a minute.
Oh shit.
No, it's just because their birthdays are the same.
All right. So earlier this week, there was a conversation going on about the Mount Rushmore of DC Comics creators on the Discord. Now, I don't know how many of you saw this, how many of you are a part of our Discord and checked this conversation out, but it was hot. It was hot. And there were a lot of names thrown out there, a lot of disagreement about who belongs, who doesn't. This was a big conversation. And I thought we could extend it and bring it over here because your boys didn't get to have our conversation.
We didn't have room.
That's true. I was in the fray, but I was having fun. But it was a lot. It was a lot. So let's do it. And I didn't even participate in Marvel, which I already have my Marvel Mount Rushmore figured out. Do you guys have thoughts about who belongs on the DC Marvel Mount Rushmore of creators?
I'm working on my Marvel one right now, but I have DC ready in my head.
Okay.
My DC one. So I guess we'll do DC first. So that makes sense.
Yeah, we'll start with DC. So I want to say before anybody gives their Mount Rushmore, which is going to be 4 people, we're gonna stick to writers, I think, because when you open it up, it just becomes too insane. Maybe we can do one for artists as well at another time, but for the sake of this, to emulate what was happening in the Discord, we're gonna keep it to writers. I'm also gonna say the 4 of us are early 30s, so all of our opinions
Speak for
are
yourself.
going. You're early 30s. What?
I'm mid-30s,
Oh, okay,
mid-30s,
all right.
baby.
Sorry.
I'm in my twilight years.
I can see the decay starting.
That's right.
We are going to approach it from the perspective of a 30-year-old comic book reader. So that means that there may be a lot of names who are important to you who won't mean as much to us. And you can argue with yourself about that. This is fun. All right.
It's fun, damn it.
Yeah. You're going to have some fucking fun. DC Mount Rushmore of writers. Tyler, go.
I just changed mine because I did have Jim Lee on there, so I'm going to take him off because it's artist. I'll start. Mark Waid. I'll put Mark Waid on there.
Yeah.
He just gets it. He understands it. George Perez. Oh wait, no, that's another fuck.
I literally just changed that myself.
He was on. He was
You guys
first on
want
the
to
list.
do? You want to include artists? Then?
No. Let's just
No,
do
they should be
writers, just do
separate.
writers, yeah.
I have mine. If anything.
Actually,
You know what?
let me make a case for George Perez because in the writer artist category as like a general creator category, because his style was so iconic and simplified for the broader universe that it's so translated, onto stuff like birthday cards and paper plates, right? Like, I think the world that George Perez drew and created visually made as much impact as any writer did at the time.
I also offer he wrote. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if this is a writer list and you choose George Perez, then you're taking him under that purview.
Sure, because I do have a Rushmore for DC artists too, but I will say I'll put Wolfman instead. So Wolfman, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison.
Wolfman, Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, Grant Morrison. Okay.
Oh, please.
Sorry, I was flirting with that writer artist angle too because I had Frank Miller, but I'll take him as the writer, and there are moments where he becomes a singular creator there. I had Grant Morrison, Scott Snyder, and Mark Waid.
So you left out Jeff Johns.
Yes, not on my personal. Yeah.
Okay.
That's incorrect, but that's fine.
Hey, can't be both right.
Mine is Kirby, Moore, Wolfman, and Johns.
Got more.
I simply don't think you can deny Alan Moore.
All right, I'm gonna share mine, and then I would love to deepen this conversation a little bit and start like scrutinizing and having a. So mine is Grant Morrison, who I pretty much put at the top, Jeff Johns, who could also be at the top, Mark Waid, and Scott Snyder.
Okay, I think Snyder is too recent for me.
But he has a
Mine
track
went in order.
record.
I didn't put mine in order. Does that matter?
No, I was
meant
just
Rushmore doesn't
okay.
Yeah.
All right.
He has a track record, but I think in terms of impact and maybe we'll see the impact of Scott, further down the line in a couple of years with as Absolute especially. But I think the stuff done on New 52, there's value there, but compared to a Moore, the impact and the creation of characters, reinvention of characters, sales, the longevity, I think I would, in my own Mount Rushmore there, would swap out Snyder, and I think Moore is a more valuable person. I think I agree, and we might all agree wholeheartedly that Grant Morrison deserves to be there. I think that's no question. Mark Waid, I think we're going to have a discussion on. And Jeff Johns, I mean, that's a bias on my part.
Can I have a hot take real quick? Grant Morrison did more for DC Comics proper than Alan Moore did,
Yes.
Ooh,
and did it
I
better.
don't think that's a
and
hot
did it
take.
better.
I think it's debatable, but I don't know if it's hot. Yeah,
I think might have did something similarly where it's a dissection of what superheroes are, but
Yeah.
Morrison's is more tied into the main continuity of DC Comics,
the actual
where
universe.
Moore's is kind of sits outside of it. So what do I think? Like if it's a Vertigo top, Mount Rushmore, Moore could be on there because of Saga of the Swamp Thing and stuff like that.
That was retroactive. That wasn't
Sure,
because he
sure.
was writing
I
for
mean, I guess
Vertigo.
Vertigo is retroactive in a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I'd also argue that's ignoring quite a bit of his DC content, though.
Sure, you got what's the Superman story that everyone loves?
Superman, he did a long run on Green Lantern.
But for me, Moore is more well known for like his not creator owned stuff, but his non DC stuff. Like Tom
Yeah, sure.
Strong, Top 10. Watchmen, I don't consider that DC proper.
Oh no, I don't think he should.
Well, they've tried to convince me to, but
Well,
I reject it.
They're wrong
Yeah.
too. I'll say it. You hear that, Mr. DC?
Yeah, so that's why I wouldn't put Moore on there.
I would definitely concede were this in order, and it doesn't need to be. But I would definitely concede like Wade over Moore, in that Wade has done more for like the building of the actual universe, and making things with a foundation, things that can last and can be built upon.
See, my argument opposing Wade, or not opposing Wade, opposing Alan Moore and Neil Gaiman was the fact that I don't think about them as DC writers. I think about them as writers who have written well, very well for DC, but their most notable works are not necessarily DC core.
If you had told me what's my Mount Rushmore of comics, I might put Alan Moore on there, actually.
Sure,
Sure.
of course.
But not for DC, yeah.
Afro Nerd Radio saying, no Schuster, no Siegel. You can't exclude those that started the genre. I mean, realistically,
Sure, I
man. Yeah, realistically, yeah, because there are people who iterate on that to produce better things. You can have the idea for sure, but if we're talking about the longevity of comics, there have been people who have transformed the original idea from what they were to make them viable to a mass audience, to more popularity, to other things.
Yeah, and also it's what we want to do, not what you want to do. You're the listener, so you don't like it, you can make your own list.
Damn.
That's not. We don't have to listen to you.
Them comics ain't that good.
Yeah. What? Who is undisputable?
Herbie.
Grant, I think we would know and argues here.
I agree with that.
Which one?
That Grant Morrison is not disputable.
I would agree. I think Kirby is disputable if we're talking about writers specifically.
Agreed.
Y'all ain't reading the Fourth World.
But
True.
how much of an impact has the Fourth World had on DC proper in terms of story? Maybe not much.
Darkseid.
In terms of, sure, but I'm not putting Schuster on there too and Simon for creating Superman.
But Darkseid has fueled most of the DC antagonism over the past minimum 20 years.
I would give the argument that Kirby influenced so much more people who then influenced DC Comics rather than just the creation of Darkseid. But like Kirby's on my, I made an artist top Rushmore too. Kirby's on there.
All right, now I'm about to start throwing fists.
I'm with Tyler in this case, where I would not put Kirby as indisputable if we are talking about writers. But again, this is generational too. I haven't read Fourth World, but I've seen people say that Kirby's writing wasn't particularly great. I don't know. I have no way of proofing that myself, but that is what I have heard.
Tom Account with the talking about generational with the OG take here. Jerry Siegel, Bill Finger, Gardner Fox, Denny O'Neil. Honorable mentions to Wade, Wolfman, and Len Wein.
Yeah.
Wein for sure. Yeah, Len Wein. Shout out to Len Wein, man.
Shout out to Atomic Hound for the $9.99. Thank you so much, Hound.
Yeah, I feel like Kirby crackle is the thing I know more. You know, like if I think of something, I think of the imagery of who and what he's done.
So we are denying Kirby.
Whoa, hey now, hey now.
Erasure.
He's on my artist, okay?
Y'all, I'm gonna have an aneurysm.
That's the perfect place for the show to be. All right, so we've said Grant is definitely there.
Yep.
Grant wouldn't be there without Kirby.
That's the point.
I agree.
That's the point. What about Jeff Johns?
Personally, I think Johns is indisputable.
I agree. He
I
is,
am with that.
I think Johns and Grant, while they are on different sort of staircases, they're on similar levels. Jeff, I think, is very much interested in, similar to Wade, expanding the broader universe and making things that feel good to read and have a real emotional core that relate to you as a comic reader. Whereas Grant is a lot more interested in exploring the heady topics that come with these mythical creatures.
I don't think you have modern DC Comics without Jeff Johns.
Yeah.
I've not read the Green Lantern stuff, and I've not read a lot of Jeff's work outside of stuff like JSA, but all of the stuff that I know pre New 52 and the things that lead up to it are informed by his works.
I feel like Jeff Johns carried DC the same way that Bendis carried Marvel. What would the 2000s have even been without them?
Even think about like 52, like that was Morrison and Jeff Johns on a book at the same time.
Yeah,
Brubaker and Rucka, I think, as well.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, they were core tenets of, DC coming into the modern age.
Chat, keep sharing those Rushmores. Chris Lister says, let's not overlook guys like Roger Stern, Peter David, or Bill Mantlo. For sure, for a person of a certain era, right? Like, that makes total sense. But I have a tough time with certain names because I just wasn't exposed to them enough. And even if I have been, they're not my era. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like looking backwards, but this is what it is right now,
The actual Mount Rushmore, if created today, would not contain all those presidents.
Right.
Ooh,
Sure.
Ooh. I have a contender.
Please.
If you're going to deny me Kirby. Keith Giffen.
Can't say it.
I can't say it either. I think... No. This almost sounded really fucked up, but I was going to say, like, good player. Like, you need him on the team. But is he on the cover of the... I can't do sports analogies. He's great, but I don't know if he's a good hand. Yeah, but that always feels like an insult when it comes from a wrestling perspective,
But I don't think it is, bro, because I think you need to have that. You've got to have the worker. You've got to have the guys who can come onto the field and knock it out the park. They're not going to do that every single night, but when you really need them, they're there for you. He's that guy.
He's a ringer, but not a closer. He's a ringer, but not a closer.
Sure.
See, to me, it's those people that should be on the Rushmore.
Nah, dude, you need the big name, the big push, if it's
also a big name for
hard
you.
worker, an ordinary, hard worker, I don't know, man. They didn't shine. They're there, but they didn't sparkle.
So we're aligned on Morrison and Johns. Now I think from here is where it gets more controversial. And I'm very interested to hear what you guys say about this name. Because I think all of us might have included him. Mark Waid.
Yes. I agree. I think there's history there. I know no other person that regularly gets referred to as the man who knows DC Comics better than DC Comics.
He just wasn't allowed to write there for a decade.
That is fair.
I think Wade has had a proto Johns moment where he helped build the universe, and now we're in a post Johns era where Wade is building again the universe.
And he's cooking.
Yeah.
He's not just there. He's cooking. Like, he's doing good work. There were a lot of people who said World's Finest was the best DC comic book, and he's half of it.
And even Absolute Power was like, it wasn't his idea, and the stuff he put in the actual 4 issues was like, you know, in our reviews we said it was a lot of like, this happened and then this happened and then this happened, but it was like, it was all good and readable despite the crazy pace that that book had.
Man, just for Kingdom Come and Flash alone, I think.
Yeah.
I would also argue that Wade is the kind of guy who you can get to do an event like Absolute Power under the kind of constrictions that I believe he had to have been under because of the impending All In. Absolute Power had a lot of things it had to do, and I think a lesser writer would have faltered under the pressures of that story, and Wade did not. It felt effortless.
Yeah. I think it's Wade.
So that's
Agreed.
3. That's 3 down. The last one is the toughest. Now, I'm going to throw this name out there just because he was on my list, but we're going to have to scrutinize this. Scott Snyder.
Too soon.
I don't think so. Yeah, I don't think so.
That's a no for me, dog.
Okay, wait. Over who? Kale and Tyler. Because I would have put more over Snyder, but now I can't think of somebody. If we're denying that person, that individual, I can't think of somebody else.
Not even over anyone. I just don't think he belongs.
Yeah.
But then you have to replace. You have to find a replacement for that.
Yeah, someone has to be
there.
there.
I'd put Wolfman there. I would put,
I think Wolfman's a great pick because Wolfman established the, was the Claremont of Marvel. He established a long-running soap opera-esque title that kept the industry afloat, or the company afloat for a long time. Was the builder of the crises, and made that work.
If Wade is on here for kind of helping usher in, I mean, we talk about ushering in DC Comics to certain eras, and Wade kind of being a modern one and what he did with, Absolute Power more recently. Wolfman's that for DC during the 80s.
Yeah, I'm saying foundation.
Yeah.
Wolfman is foundation.
I think had you not made that comparison between him and Claremont, that was a deciding factor for me. I agree with that. That makes sense.
Man, but I think I do feel like Scott Snyder has a viable claim because he was the writer of Batman when they did the New 52, which was the best-selling book that they had for quite some time. So he was the architect of that. He was the architect of the Justice League and really of DC after I guess it would have been after Rebirth began. Or somewhere in there.
Yeah, Justice League.
And then he has had two big events, Metal and Death Metal, and he's back again leading the charge with Absolute Batman. I think that's a claim.
Just not over Wolfman. Like I think it's a claim if there is 5 spots on here, but there's not.
Okay.
What?
I think interesting. My favorite anecdote about the Mount Rushmore is you've got Washington there because he's the first president. You got Abraham Lincoln there because he ended slavery. You got Thomas Jefferson there because of the Declaration of Independence. And you got Teddy Roosevelt there because he paid for it. I could definitely see Scott Snyder being that guy.
That's funny. Sanji, go ahead.
Please.
Sanji says Sean don't want to respect the elders. Tisk tisk. Let's not even start that because I'm always the one going to bat for the elders on this podcast.
Honestly, out of everyone on this list, Wolfman deserves to be on it.
Yeah, I've been convinced.
I put up a poll: Marv Wolfman, Scott Snyder, Alan Moore, Neil Gaiman. Who should take the final spot on the Comics Pals DC Mount Rushmore? Get your votes in. It's just going to be up for a few more moments. Marv Wolfman is the clear winner at the current moment. We'll see how it plays out. Get Shitty says, what about Paul Dini?
Transmedia, sure. Comics specifically, I don't think so.
Yeah, I can't see that. Not for core comics.
While we're waiting for this poll, want me to throw up my artist where? I don't know if anyone else came up with.
We're gonna do it, so
okay,
don't.
Cool.
Yeah, we're
Okay,
gonna.
okay,
I mean, if Gavin can come on next week, it'd be great to do that with Gavin.
So then let's do Marvel writers.
Yeah.
And
We're
then
gonna-
we'll do artists next week.
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do Marvel writers here now, and then we're gonna
Okay.
do artists next week.
Sick.
Or
I'm missing one,
Yo.
dude. I'm so close. I'm missing one. I feel like there's someone there, and I'm just like, it's over my head.
I can throw
On
my
the-
Marvel writers out if we want to start.
Well, I want there to be a clean transition. So I guess I'll just close the poll. Marv
Yeah.
Wolfman is winning, handedly. He definitely won the poll. Marv Wolfman 51%, Alan Moore 24%, Snyder at 17, and Neil Gaiman with only 6% of the vote. So I agree. Actually, I will align with Marv Wolfman, and I think that's a pretty solid Mount Rushmore. We've got Grant Morrison, and if we wanted to say who's at the top of it, I think we're probably aligned with that. Or
Morrison at the top?
yeah, or Jeff.
I think it's Wolfman.
I think Wolfman at the top. Yeah.
I can't go with that, but
He's-
I don't
he's
want
a
to
George
argue
Washington.
about it.
Well, think about okay. Who's the George Washington? It's got to be Wolfman.
Sure, but I don't care. I don't like I get that, but I don't think about the Mount Rushmore conversation that way. I get what you mean though.
Do you think of the Mount Rushmore conversation in terms of ranking?
Which one of these
No.
4 comics creators ended slavery? Grant?
Scott Snyder, obviously. All right, so we've got Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, Mark Waid, and Marv Wolfman. That is our 4. That's our Mount Rushmore. If you don't agree with it, you can argue with yourself. I think that is a list that encompasses, the writers of DC who have really held it down.
And if you don't agree with it, you could also argue in the comments because that helps the algorithm. Thank you.
I want to hear your opinion,
They
man.
can't help themselves.
Argue with each other in the comments.
Yeah.
Oh, I
Don't argue with
love
us.
that. I love when there's like debate within each other, like within people's comments.
Dan says we can't open the door on Wolfman and also dismiss O'Neill. That's why I don't think you should mix eras. Yeah, but there's only 4 spots. So it's gonna come down to someone not being represented somewhere. And that's just where we drew the line.
And it's
I
not
wanted
Keith
Kirby.
Giffen. Well, you're wrong.
Well, I mean, and just like the
Oh.
actual white,
I was wrong about Kirby.
But you gonna throw hands
Yeah.
on my birthday?
Yeah.
the, shi-
Fucking rude.
Beat your ass on your birthday.
the shipping on those hands must be terrible.
It is. Trust me.
I was gonna say just like the actual Mount Rushmore, it's just full of white dudes.
Well,
yeah.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah, typical.
It's just
it's
Why
Marvel.
Sean can't care about it.
it's just comics, no women, Let's switch over to the Marvel side of things. And we're gonna talk about our Mount Rushmore of Marvel writers. I feel like I'm very interested to hear what you guys have to say.
This
I-
felt easier.
I'm
yeah.
having a hard
Oh,
time.
mine felt like, all right, obviously. Mine was like I looked at these 4, I'm like, obviously.
Oh, I just came up with my 3.
So I have Brian Michael Bendis, Stan Lee, Chris Claremont, Frank Miller.
Okay.
Makes a lot of sense.
I have go ahead, Marco.
Sorry, I had Bendis, Chris Claremont, Stan Lee, and Jonathan Hickman.
Hickman was on mine, and then I replaced with Frank Miller.
That's my same list, Marco.
Yeah, because it's the right answer. That's why.
I can't even, like, I'm sure there are lots of arguments, but dude, that is it.
That's the list. I think it's the list.
Those are the guys.
But that was Tyler's list. Why did you swap out Hickman?
Hickman, I think Bendis did more for the modern era than Hickman did. And I think Miller did more for Marvel than Hickman did.
What?
Miller reestablished what street level comics are. With Wolverine, Daredevil, and Elektra. Elektra's debatable. But I just think the stuff Miller did is just, it's more iconic and it's more important for what it did for Marvel Comics. Like, Hickman stuff is great, but it's for Hickman.
What do you mean it's for Hickman?
And Hickman nerds.
Yeah. Can you tell me a lasting effect that it's had that other people have been able to piggyback off of? Because that's all Big Two Comics is constantly piggybacking off of other people's ideas and storytelling. Hickman's stuff is so insular in what it does.
Tyler, you realize you're talking about the guy who established the Krakoan era in which people were literally piggybacking off of what he was doing, right?
Yeah, and it no longer exists.
Frank Miller's, what the fuck? What kind of argument is that? Okay, it ended. Shit ends. That doesn't matter.
Well, I think what Frank Miller did for street level stuff like Daredevil and reinventing Wolverine to be who Wolverine really is right now, and Claremont helped too, has more lasting effects than what Krakoa will.
We don't know. It just ended it ended this year.
Fair. Hickman's my 5. Like I said, Hickman's my 5, but I think Miller is more important.
Kale, where you at?
Man.
Having a midlife crisis.
Kale, can I throw another name out there that might conflict you?
He's like this would be the cause of my midlife crisis. I work retail, right? Hit me.
Electric throws up Starlin too. And I'm like, oh, fuck.
See, Englehart and Starlin are two writers that I wish I had more experience with. I don't. I've read a little bit of Starlin, I think, with some of the Thanos stuff.
But yeah, you can take a safe bet that if Thanos is in it, Starlin wrote it. Yeah.
Yeah. But I've seen a lot of older readers say that the Englehart Captain America stuff is like top tier, and I would love to read that. I'm with Lee, I'm with Claremont, I'm with Bendis, absolutely. Boy, I just Miller makes a lot of sense to me.
So undisputable, Bendis, Lee, and Claremont.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Nobody says
Yeah.
anything against that. Okay.
We're on that fourth one. I look at Miller the same way I look at Moore, the same way I look at Gaiman. I think Miller is a huge contributor to the industry overall, but I wouldn't say that when I think about Marvel Comics, I think about Frank Miller. Hickman has only written Big Two Wise for Marvel. His biggest contributions are there, mainline, in continuity. Felt today, obviously, because Krakoa just ended. So I think, from a modern perspective, there's no doubt that Hickman as an architect has had more to do with Marvel's trajectory than anybody in the last 10 years.
But I would say the same about Miller. Miller stuff is the stuff that, is continuity, is at the time was rebuilding, reinvigorating, especially when you look at Daredevil, and Wolverine. I think I think that makes a lot of sense to me. More so than Hickman.
Okay, Kale, let me ask you this question.
Okay, please.
Frank Miller,
Yeah.
Marvel or DC? When you think about Frank,
You see,
It's Marvel for
That-
me, but I'm a
that's
Daredevil
it.
head.
but
So
my favorite book, Miller book, is The Dark Knight Returns.
I think of
I don't think
Miller
that's it.
more with DC than I think of him with Marvel. His biggest contributions to comics are objectively at DC. I don't. I feel like if we're talking about Frank Miller, it's got to be in the context of DC and not Marvel for a top four.
And I think he's also in the Mount Rushmore of comics. Not even like I think he ascends to another level in general because he's been so prevalent at other publishers as well.
and I will say it's a little tricky because when I think of Miller Marvel, I think of more than just what he wrote.
Fair.
Because he did draw Spider-Man. He drew a lot of Spider-Man. Some of the issues I have. He, drew like The Thing. Like he drew other comics before, So that is maybe clouding things for me a bit because he does both. But in my eyes, the way I broke this down was the four tenets of Marvel in my eyes: X-Men, Avengers, street level, and like Spider-Man. I know Spider-Man at street level is kind of iffy. So I have Claremont for X-Men, Bendis for Avengers, Stan Lee for creating Spider-Man, and Miller for street level. And that's how I broke things down, where Hickman didn't really fit into one of those more than the others who were already there.
Dan says, I just think you can't be on Rushmore if you moved on after a handful full of years. That's Miller at Marvel. Frank Miller and Alan Moore don't belong on the Rushmore of either company. DC and Marvel were steps on their ladder, not defining runs.
Steps on the ladder so we can get to Holy Terror.
Well, let's see what the chat says. Let's get a poll going. I'm gonna get a poll up here,
Oh,
and
I've
you
already
guys
started.
tell it. Huh?
I've already started. I'm
Okay.
doing a binary.
Yeah, one or the other.
Yeah.
Miller or Hickman.
Right point. Bizarro Planet says without Miller's Daredevil, there would not be Ninja Turtles. And that's indisputable.
I don't think that helps
Sure.
a Marvel Rushmore, though.
Yeah, that's a contribution to something not Marvel.
That's why comics
are better. So
yeah.
I think that that's a Rushmore conversation.
If we were talking about like Mount Rushmore of just comics in general, I would have no question that Frank Miller should be in that talk.
Ooh, I just saw a name.
Jerry
Conway. Interesting.
Feels like another ringer, man.
That feels like another Keith Giffen.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Another jobber. All
Damn, bro.
No, not a jobber.
Not a jobber.
All due respect, a guy that comes in and gets the job done.
That's not what a jobber is. Jobber is a person who eats the pin. A jobber is a scrub, like someone there to do the job, but that means lose.
No hate to Joe Kelly. Joe Kelly is a jobber right now for Spider-Man.
We don't know yet.
We do know he's only doing this arc.
Yeah, he's a transitional champion, but he's
Sure.
still a champion. Writing Amazing Spider-Man ain't doing the job. I see. It's pretty close right now. Jonathan Hickman and Miller. It's pretty close. I'm very interested to see how this nets out.
I gotta say, the Marvel artist one is gonna be rough next week.
Oh, we're gonna have a Marvel artist here
Hey.
to discuss it.
It's gonna
How the
be-
fuck are we gonna argue with Gavin?
Easily.
Hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
I argue all the time.
Yeah.
Get ready, Gav.
I'll argue with God. Don't even think.
It's
Hey,
Grant
easy.
Morrison.
Conway is consistent, steady hand. Exactly, get shitty. That's exactly right.
That's what I said.
You said jobber. Sanji says,
doesn't-
"Can
he
we
doesn't-
get an Image Mount Rushmore?" Fuck.
Isn't that just the founders?
Like literally. No,
there's
it
what,
would literally
six?
have to be them.
Just
I-
one big mountain carved in the shape of Kirkman.
Well, he's not an original founder.
But he is a.
But
Founder,
he-
technically.
He's the reason it's still around.
Yeah, you can literally not have a Mount Rushmore of Image without Robert Kirkman on.
No, but my point being, it's not only just the founders.
Oh,
it
yes. Well, oh god, this could expand so much. Let's not do it right now.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
like of the founders, just of the founders, who would you include?
Larson,
Larson. Yeah, Eric Larson.
easy.
McFarlane.
McFarlane, Larson, Kirkman.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
We
It's
got
so
3.
easy.
Let's hit 4. We might as well.
Jim Lee's not on there. I'm sorry, Jim Lee's not on there. He dipped.
Jim
Liefeld
Lee
not
is
on
not-
there.
I would wait. Who?
Hold on.
Liefeld actually.
Hold on.
Liefeld might be on there.
I think Liefeld might be on there.
God damn.
And let me pause it. Not because of his books.
He's a Teddy Roosevelt.
My man paid for it.
With the money he got from those jeans advertisements.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
ever see those?
All
They're
right.
so good, dude.
I think I'm gonna call this one. It's clearly
Yeah.
Jonathan.
It
Hickman.
became a landslide.
It's Hickman?
Yep, 62 to
I don't know
37.
if 62 is a landslide.
I hate this country.
62%. What?
It's a majority.
2/3.
That's yeah, you guys overwhelmingly chose Hickman. So then that's it.
That's it.
Lee, Claremont, Bendis, Hickman.
I don't agree with it, but I'll respect it.
Honorable
I
mention
won't respect the
to-
diss to Kirby, but
Oh, we'll talk about Kirby next week.
Yeah,
For
we're gonna
sure.
have to.
Yeah,
We're absolutely gonna have to.
I think Kirby is one of the only people that shows up on 2 lists.
And,
not here.
not for writers. That's all. Not for writers.
It's wrong.
Although you can argue that he did most of the actual writing and storytelling in Marvel Comics.
I am.
That was a DC conversation we
I'm
were
saying
having.
Stan Lee wrote the words, but did he write the story? Debatable.
What? Did he write the words?
Yeah.
He wrote the words, but did he write the story?
Right. Yeah. Marvel
Yeah,
method.
that's what I said.
Not how that works.
The Marvel method, that's how it works.
I don't know. Dan says, sorry, but writing defining runs of the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and X-Men puts you over the top versus Miller. Agreed. Silhouette says, nah. Nah, what do you mean, nah? Didn't you want to put Tom King on your fucking list? How dare you? My man wanted to put Tom King on his DC Mount Rushmore.
If we're ever talking about like what ifs in comics, the what if Tom King stayed at Marvel after Vision always intrigues me. What would he have done if DC didn't be and just scoop him out of there?
Spider-Man.
I see. I always thought Iron Man.
I always thought Iron Man too.
See Iron Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One day.
Iron Man. Oh,
I'm sure he has a story for Iron Man. Right.
For sure, dude. A war, the cost of that's his bread and butter. Fuck Batman.
Tony Stark's already a war criminal. It's already built in.
Exactly.
Tom King character.
Yeah, he's not fucking. What is it? Adam.
All right, this is a different main topic. This is the what ifs of comics. This is a whole different thing.
The what if pals?
Promiscuous Time Traveler says, and the white male counter says 8.
That's comics, baby.
Definitely. Mr. DC Comics says, take Tom King back, please.
You put him on Wonder Woman. It's a great book. You know what you're doing.
He did it.
Mr. DC
No.
is right here.
Mr. DC is regretting his life choices right now.
Wow.
I like the idea that he is now RPing as DC Comics. Appreciate that.
What do you mean? He is.
It is him, yeah.
It's Mr. DC, dude.
Oh my god, I love it. Atomic Count says Tom King to Marvel for Spider-Man and X-Men. Tom King on
No.
X-Men has go away heat for me.
And Spider-Man.
Word.
Fuck that.
I want to see it.
Nah, I don't know,
talk
man.
about story creative team choices that'll get me out of comics.
Yo, but you know
Tom
what?
King on Spider-Man.
Tom King with Pepe Larraz? Like it.
On what?
Only because of Pepe Larraz. That's not fair.
But on what though, Marco?
I'm thinking Iron Man.
Yes, but I don't know if Pepe Larraz is the vibe for that though.
12-issue Blue
I think-
Marvel miniseries. Let's go.
I think the problem is an Iron Man book doesn't have is it Gracia that colors Pepe Larraz so good?
Yeah.
Iron Man doesn't have, and certainly not to say Marta Gracia couldn't do an absolutely killer color palette for Iron Man, but based on what we've seen, I would not put them on that book.
Is it weird when I think of Iron Man? I think of, who's the guy that looks like he does porn, like he
Greg
draws
Land?
it. What'd you say?
Greg
I
Land?
think of the way Greg Land was colored in like the late 2000s, early 2010s.
Yeah.
The Sinclair?
I don't remember who,
Mm,
but like the way I think of LaRocca art when I think of Iron Man.
yeah.
like
I
a
would
lot
lo-
of warm
I would-
colors.
I would love an Iron Man book where it actually looks good.
Who did the art on Extremis? Because I love that.
It's a great question. I also
Good
like that
question.
book.
That's a good question.
That should look good.
I think of fractions around when I think of Iron Man. honestly.
This is Adi Granov.
Edie Grant.
Oh, Adi Granov. I forgot he did
God.
interiors.
Oh my god, dude.
Dude, I went over. I had a whiskey tasting last weekend at my friend's place, and he busted out all his comics, and he had so many Eddie Granov signed variants. I'm like, man, Eddie Granov is good.
One of the gods, dude. And so far from us now in terms of doing interiors.
Proposition.
Sure.
Next week, can we do a third Mount Rushmore? We're gonna do Marvel and DC artists with Gavin of cover artists, because I think that is a separate thing entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see. I mean, shit. Now we've got image, we've got covers, we got to do women. We got to do.
Tell
you know,
me.
we got to. Apparently, there are a lot of Mount Rushmores we need to do around here. It's getting crazy.
Mount Rushmore month.
Oof, Granov is the best Iron Man artist ever, says Tilo. I don't have enough experience to argue with that. I can only go 20 years back with you.
Wait, nobody else booked Tom King with somebody or on a book
Because I don't want to read Tom King anymore.
Oh,
at
shit.
Marvel?
I don't want to read Tom King anymore.
Eh?
People saying Tom King can't do team books have not read Omega Man. Just saying.
Man, I would love to go back to Omega Man and see how
Sure.
it holds up.
The characters are going to be showing up in Absolute Superman coming up, so.
Silhouette says if Hickman stays a sold out still writing at Marvel, Tom King for Legion of Superheroes to give them a revival. So basically saying if Hickman does not leave Marvel, then give the Legion to Tom King.
Ooh,
Don't
Kale
do
hate that.
Don't do that. Just
I
give it to
don't-
me. Give it to me. I'll do it.
Mr. Marvel.
Yeah, where's Mr. Marvel in the chat? Who's funny enough to do
real.
that?
Yo, Tilo. Actually, I'll save my opinion on an individual artist for next week.
Yeah, trust me. I think that artist is going to come up. Yeah.
Oh, trust me, it will. I better not land.
Wow. Okay, we're going to have a
The
discussion. next week.
disrespect
Wow.
is fucking crazy. Who was it that said that I disrespect the elders?
Hmm? Hmm?
Did you hear what this fucker just said right now? Marco, you need this. You need this red flag. Disrespect Junior like that. How dare you?
Because I'm thinking of senior boy.
The father and the son. How dare you?
Just need one.
Wow. Inktology says you guys rock. Just saying, fun listening to y'all always. Thank you so much, Inktology. And thank you to go ahead, Kill.
No, please.
Thank you to everyone for hanging out with us for nearly 3 hours now. I love the fact that we can have these like we're not off script. Well, we kind of are off script.
Yeah,
We plan to do two Mount Rushmores. We did that. Now we're talking about booking Tom King at Marvel. What's happening?
I think it was Promiscuous Time Traveler said Mount Rushmore of Comics Pals hosts. I'm clearly Teddy Roosevelt.
Izzy says, can't believe we have to cut Kale for Pete on that one. Damn. But you know what? Fair.
Oh my god, dude, I can't. Tom McCown said red flag on his birthday. Fuck yeah.
It deserves two.
Marco ignores
What?
red flags, so this means nothing to him.
You think you definitely deserve two. Absolutely.
Pete Collins says Marco's artist on Mount Rushmore, Mid Journey 4 times.
Mid Journey, Dolly.
They've got 4,000 teeth all the way across.
Oh my god. Oh,
Florentino allegedly.
wow. Crazy. Crazy. All right. I want to before we jump, and I'll manage this differently next time. But before we jump, I do want to give space to the rest of our patrons who have been incredible enough to donate their hard-earned money to support the cause of the Comics Pals. I don't want to leave you guys out in the cold. I want to say thank you to Amin Almighty Perez, Paul Powerhouse Smith, Andrew the Galaxian Smith, Neon Knight the Cosmic Avenger, Matthew the Shade Cosmo, BJ Kicks, the Living Blade, Boss Rundeer, the Grand Alchemist, Chop Harder Alchemist, John Barrier B, Simon Gale Force, Todd Tremor Butler, Cameron Cavernous Gordon, Dave Doomsday David Melendez Doria, Cameron Torn Thornton, Brian Rage Redmond, Panda v Panda Marco. What was the nickname? Did you have one?
Ted, just Ted.
Ted. Okay. All right. Sick.
Ed the Panda.
Ted the Panda. I love it. And then I also want to welcome. I want to welcome to the PalsVerse Steve Swarm Kanaras. So we're going to end the show today with a PalsVerse origin. Here we go. Steve's never known fear like this in his life. Alone at night in what feels like an endless forest with only his tent, flashlight, and backpack. It wasn't supposed to be this way. He and his friends planned this for weeks. They'd tell their parents they were each going to each other's houses, but they'd actually camp out overnight in the forest. They would see if anyone chickened out before night fell, who lost their cool before morning, and called their mom or dad to pick them up. They each placed their bets on Steve not being able to hang past sundown, let alone through the night. He was intent on proving them wrong, though, showing them that he wasn't afraid. Okay, he was afraid, but no more than they were, and not afraid enough to ruin everything by calling his parents. Yet he woke up in the middle of the night to find that his friends were gone. Tents, bags, not a single piece of evidence to suggest anyone other than him had ever been there. And now that he was alone, not a soul in the world to prove anything to, he could admit to himself that he was indeed terrified. He dug into his pocket for his phone, but felt nothing. He frantically searched through his pack, shuffling through clothes and other items, but no phone. This cruel prank had gone too far, and now Steve had no way of calling for help. Just then, he heard a loud call, causing him to jerk his flashlight up towards the trees. A crow sat perched on one of the branches, eyes clearly trained on Steve. It took off, flying directly towards him, causing him to let out a yell and toss himself to the ground, avoiding contact with the bird. A loud bellow came from within the forest. Steve's yell awakened something that did not want to be disturbed. Steve covered his mouth, lowered his flashlight, and waited with bated breath for a sign that his would-be predator was on the move. He heard loud thumping and thrashing coming from his left, and those sounds told him enough. He took off in the opposite direction, running for his life from a creature he's yet to see. Overhead, he heard the flapping of a bird's wings. Could it have been the same crow from before? Steve had never run faster or harder in his life. Fear can be a tremendous motivator. It can unleash things within us we didn't know were there, forge connections that would otherwise never be made. It can also make a person make mistakes. Steve stumbled over himself, not used to moving at this pace, and fell to the ground. He tried to return to his feet, but the sound of the beast in the woods came ever closer, and Steve was trapped by fear. The sound now of dozens, maybe hundreds of birds flapping their wings and cawing filled the air, drowning out the sound of the creature barreling through the forest. Steve looked to the sky and saw the birds, blacking out the little light that came from the stars. Then they began to descend. Steve watched in awe as the birds flew downward. They enveloped him, swarmed him. He had never felt more fear in his life than this moment. But if the cavalcade of crows, owls, and ravens wanted him dead, they would have picked him apart clean to the bone by now. They were protecting him. The sounds and feelings overwhelmed Stephen, and he passed out where he lay. The birds watched over him through the night. The predator that chased Stephen down was itself scared off by the birds, who had chosen Stephen. The next day, Stephen's 3 friends ventured back into the forest, anxious to see the outcome of their prank. When they returned to where they'd last seen him, they found nothing but his tent. Maybe he managed to make it home. Then the sky was blackened by a wave of birds. The birds moved quickly and sharply. They knew their targets. They descended upon the boys faster than they could react, but this time the birds had no intention of protection. The sounds of the boys' screams were drowned out by the birds, flapping, biting, clawing. It didn't take long before there was nothing left of the boys or the campsite at all. Steve watched from a perch not far away, the crow that first watched him sitting on his shoulder. Stephen cried no tears for his friends. They mistreated him. Besides, he had new friends now. Thank you, Stephen, and welcome to the PalsVerse. Keep your birds away from me, buddy. Kel, you're muted.
I said hell yeah. Ta-ka, motherfucker.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for hanging out through that. Go ahead, Tyler. You have a fix.
So the birds killed the people.
Yeah.
Would you call it a murder?
Yes.
Whoa.
Yes, I would. And if they were all crows, I would have called them a murder. Yeah.
Oh, they weren't all crows.
No,
I was
yeah,
gonna
all
say
different kinds.
Steve Murder
And
Kanaras.
Mermation is not a fun name.
I don't get it.
That's what a group of birds like.
Oh.
Different, but like it's a dumb word. So
Fair enough. So thank you. If you want your own origin, the best way, the only way at the moment to get that is through patreon.com/thecomicspals under the join the PalsVerse tier. And I also want to make sure I shout out Sugui Death, who recently became a PalsVerse legend. Thank you so much for that. And I also want to make sure that I call out my man, where is his name? My man Max, the Guardian of Oa, who's getting an origin really soon. Thank you guys so much. You are fantastic. We appreciate you. The next time that we will be live with you is this Thursday. But before that, do not miss out on our new show, which is debuting this Monday. If you were listening to me in the future, but it is not yet Monday the 18th, that means that it's coming out on the 18th. If you're a channel member, you can watch it right now. And I hope to see that a lot of you have checked it out and have given feedback throughout the weekend because we really need it. Thank you for listening. Until next time, take care, guys.
Zari Severino Jr. Sorry I missed it, but we'll see you next week.